Note: before we begin, I would like to apologize at how long it took for this video to be made. If you saw my I'm Not Dead video previously, you would know that over the end of 2024 and the start of 2025, there were a lot of changes in my life. The biggest of all was that I started my very first ever full-time job, which, while exciting, was exhausting. But hey, enough of that, let's get into the video. In the first part of this recap of Stargate SG-1 Season 1, I went through the original creation story of the series and the first 11 episodes of its incredibly thoroughly imagined and dense first season. One of my most repeated comments about the season in the first video was that so many integral ideas, concepts, and plot devices were introduced in this first season, which set it apart from other shows, genre or procedural, in that the first season was utilized incredibly well as a foundation of what the series would become. Now, was the first season of Stargate SG-1 perfect? No, of course not. We can never forget the unfortunate amalgamation of time crunch and necessary padding to fill the network's contracted episode count that became the episode Emancipation, but seeing as that episode is almost universally objectively the only bad episode of Season 1 is a testament to the quality of the writing, the universe building, and the foundation forging of SG-1's first season. Originally, I wanted to end the first part on episode 15, Singularity, as that was the last episode broadcast in 1997. I thought it would be a nice parallel, but I had to make the executive decision to instead end the first part on episode 11, The Torment of Tantalus, due to how long production on the first video took, as well as the fact that I like the two parts having an equal number of episodes. And it just so happened that Torment was a pretty cool ending point as well. A lot of the stuff I'm about to talk about in this disclaimer section is the same from the first part of my Season 1 recap. Like, in the first part, there will be spoilers for the episodes I talk about in this video, but if at any point of the video I mention something that makes you go, ooh, that actually sounds pretty cool, or wow, I kind of want to see that, then please pause the video and go and watch the original show. As much as I hate the fact that all Stargate media is locked behind the extra paywall that is MGM+, we need more eyes and traction for Overlord Bezos to release more Stargate content, as Amazon currently owns everything MGM. If you can't find it in yourself to fork out more money to Bezos, as you rightly shouldn't, then DVDs and Blu-ray are still a thing, right? I love DVDs, and I will be so torn up if physical copies ever go extinct. My family has all the DVDs for the entire franchise, except for Infinity, Origins, Catherine, and I believe Universe Season 2, but we'll get to that. And that's how I'm getting footage for the videos. And if you're not capable of getting the physical copies, then, and in no way am I condoning this action, but the internet always finds a way, and there might be avenues that I'm not suggesting you take, where the show could be acquired. I also mentioned this in the previous video of the series, but I won't be going in depth into future seasons until we reach them. However, I will still mention the first appearance of a concept or a plot idea that the show will further explore in future seasons. As always, please remember that anything that is said in these videos are my own opinions, so if you don't agree with my interpretation or opinion of something, then please be kind so that we can have a respectful discussion about it all. And finally, now that I've had a couple of recap videos under my belt, I'm hoping that this video won't be as much of a slog as previous videos as I continue to hone and develop my skills. That being said, I will continue to say what I want and what I believe is important to talk about. So without further ado, let's get right into the second half of SG-1 Season 1 and let's talk about it. Why is this so hard to push? I really should have done this beforehand, before we started doing the video and getting ready. I can't believe I left it at the last minute. Episode 12, Bloodlines. Now, before we start on this episode, let's note that this episode is the only one Mark Saraceni worked on in the show, though he's no slouch when it comes to sci-fi writing, as he would go on and become a writer for the Farscape series, a series we'll get to see a couple of people appear in Stargate SG-1. Jeffrey King's first contribution to SG-1 is the fantastic O'Neill character study that is Cold Lazarus. And finally, Mario Azzopardi is the man who invented the series' filming language, and he has returned to direct another solid episode. Some people might be a little tired of the fact that I'm tracking who has written or directed each episode, but I believe it's pretty important to keep in mind, as they all had helped in making SG-1 the show that it became. And it's also quite cool noting how early massive figureheads of the show, like Robert C. Cooper, actually started getting involved in developing the lore of the show. Reminder, Robert C. Cooper's first episode was Season 1, Episode 6, The First Commandment, and he would later become a head writer, an executive producer, and co-creator of Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. Anyway, quick warning about this cold open. It does use use bright flashing lights to signify the confusion and claustrophobia that Teal'c experiences during his vision about his son's, Ryak's, upcoming ceremony of implantation, the Primta. More on that soon. The beautiful thing that this cold open shows is the intrinsic trauma that this ceremony of implantation has left in Teal'c's psyche. The juxtaposing and conflicting nature of his being is showcased here, with the freedom that he wishes to experience for himself and his people colliding with the undeniable need to rely on the very oppressors that prevent that freedom from coming to fruition. And yes, this is going to be an episode exploring Teal'c's character, if you haven't realized yet. The enemy within and Thor's hammer started to explore this friction in Teal'c's identity as one of them, yet also is one of the team. But Bloodlines instead decides to build upon Teal'c's character and identity by being the first introduction to the fact that he has a family. But let's go back to the beginning. The episode starts in the SGC during a failed experiment to replace Teal'c's dependence on the Goa'uld symbiote with a drug. Though they failed, the experiment does prove that the symbiote acts as a Jafar's immune system. And though an adult Jafar can survive for a short period of time without a Goa'uld symbiote, he cannot last long. After the opening sequence, SG-1 is in a meeting with General Hammond, debriefing on the failed experiment. Teal'c voices the idea that there are hundreds of Goa'uld larvae symbiotes that the humans could study in Chulak, but since their previous visits ended quite explosively, the team quickly shuts that idea down, though they do notice that Teal'c seems to be taking the rejection quite personally. In Teal'c's quarters, O'Neill checks up on him, and Teal'c reveals that he left a family when he decided to help the humans and other prisoners on Chulak. This revelation rightfully shocks O'Neill, and Teal'c is adamant that he'll return to Chulak. And this is where Teal'c talks more about the Primta, so I'll let him talk about it.
Within days, my son will come of age. Be called to the religious life of our world. He will undergo the ceremony of implantation. The Primta, the day when a young boy receives his first Goa'uld symbiote and becomes a true Jafar, just as all other Jafar before him.
I take it you don't want that to happen.
It is the means by which the Goa'uld enslave the Jafar. I am not the only one among my people who believes this. My first teacher, the Jafar Master Braytak, very well the Goa'uld are false gods, but I cannot. I will not allow my son to become a slave.
This is also the first mention of Braytak, and because of Chekhov's Braytak, we'll meet him for the first time later in the episode. We cut to SG-1 trying to convince Hammond to allow for a mission back to Chulak, and this exchange between O'Neill and Hammond is hilarious.
How many of these other Jafar can you be sure of?
We're pretty sure of at least one guy.
One?
In order to convince Hammond, O'Neill is forced to reveal the truth about Ryak. Before he could make a decision, the alarms go off to signify a gate activation, and they find Teal'c in the control room in his Jafar getup to return to Chulak. Seeing the determination in Teal'c's eyes, Hammond decides to allow for a mission back to Chulak. It's two objectives: one, to gather a sample of a Goa'uld larva, and two, to save Ryak's life. And it's a gesture that Teal'c will never forget. The team travels to Chulak undercover as a Serpent soldier and 3 priests. On Chulak, they are met with a number of Jafar soldiers and priests waiting for them. Obviously, their last visit to Chulak has spooked the Apophis loyalists on Chulak a little bit. The team hide their disguises once they are deep inside the beautiful forests of Chulak, and Teal'c leads them to his former home, stating that the ceremony should take place there. But when they reach the dwelling, to their horror, they find the place burnt down, a symbol of a traitor left on one of the last standing walls of the property. This is also the first utterance of Sholva, which means traitor. You'll hear a lot of Goa'uld and Jafar characters call Teal'c this, and it's pretty much the closest thing to a slur in the Goa'uld language. Teal'c is distraught, believing that his family had been murdered by loyalists for his betrayal, as the rest of the team attempt to convince him that there's still a chance that his family is still alive. And this is when an old Jafar soldier holds O'Neill and the rest up, yelling orders in Goa'uld. However, once Teal'c sees the old man, he greets him as Braytak. Hello! Braytak gives Teal'c the great news that his wife and son did not die in the fire, but managed to escape. Teal'c introduces SG-1 to Braytak, who is initially quite dismissive of the team, calling out Carter for her womanliness, and DJ for basically being a big nerd. After a short altercation, Braytak reveals that he's in fact quite spry for 133 years old. Braytak reveals some exposition about Teal'c's wife and son, describing them as Kreshta, or outcasts. I don't believe that this concept returns ever again, but it's nice to see that at the very least the Goa'uld don't kill the whole family for the actions of one Sholva. O'Neill orders DJ and Carter to go back near the gate and hide somewhere they could provide cover fire, just in case the mission goes haywire. They should wait there for about 24 hours, and if he and Teal'c don't return by then they should escape. There's this quite humorous exchange that introduces us to Braytak's literalism, like Teal'c's, as shown in moments like, "I am not Lucy" in The Broker Divide.
If we are discovered, you will be brought before Apophis along with us.
Well, we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
No. The bridge is too well guarded.
No, actually, there I was using a cliche that...
Let's go follow this soft B-plot of the episode for a little bit with Carter and DJ. On their way back to the gate, the two happen to stumble across a line of Jafar priests holding some sort of ark. An ark of truth? No, we're a decade too early for that. The two follow the conga line towards some sort of shrine to Apophis near a castle. The ark that they've been carrying seem to have been holding gold lava, and they scoop it out and place them in the cauldron with other lava. Carter notes that it's quite odd to leave the infant forms of their gods out in the open with no protection, but then DJ does mention that nobody on Chulak would ever need to steal lava, so why bother? Carter fulfills one of the team's mission objectives, and as they are about to leave, Daniel falls prey to his dark side a little bit from his trauma of losing his wife to a Goa'uld parasite by shooting up the rest of the infant Goa'uld lava. Going back to Teal'c, Braytak, and O'Neill, they arrive at an outcast camp, and luckily it's the correct one, as Teal'c notices a ceremonial tent there and races to it. Now, there's a shot here, and let's chalk up the fact that this Jafar priest is using a gold hand device as a little bit of Season 1 lore looseness. As though it's not definitively stated at any point in the series, it's pretty much implied that Jafar would not be able to use this level of Goa'uld technology, as they do not have the protein marker required to operate it like those who used to be Goa'uld hosts, like Kendra in Thor's Hammer. Before the implantation ceremony could go much further, Teal'c manages to stop the priest performing it, though this leads to a quick fight that ultimately ends with the deaths of the priest and the infant Goa'uld lava that was about to be implanted in Ryak. Oh, and we also get introduced in this episode to Dreyok, Teal'c's wife, who is played by Sally Richardson in this episode and this episode only. But back to Dreyok in the tent, she ain't too happy about the lava being killed, as Ryak is really sick. There's a bit of a moment here while Braytak and O'Neill dispose of the priest's body that's kind of icky looking at it through a 2025 lens, but it's quite important in documenting Teal'c's character development. Can I just quickly note that I'm not a big fan of the actor of Ryak, and I don't want to be too harsh on his actor, Neil Dennis, because he was literally 10 years old when this episode was broadcast, but let's just say that his acting is not the strongest, even as he grew older. But actually look, this first scene of him seeing Teal'c, it's quite alright, I'll give Dennis that. The emotional crux of this episode comes from the part where, as they're transporting Ryak towards the Stargate, they realize that Ryak had stopped breathing, and Teal'c is then forced to implant Ryak with his own Goa'uld lava. The act of implanting his own son and starting his own son's utter dependence on the Goa'uld breaks Teal'c's heart. And later, Ryak starts getting better really quickly, but Teal'c informs the group that by the time Ryak is healthy enough to resume the journey to the Stargate, Teal'c will probably be dead due to the lack of the lava in his pouch. DJ and Carter meet up with them, and O'Neill quickly tells them of the situation with Teal'c and Ryak. The episode plays it as a happy circumstance, playing a warm soundtrack, but in reality, the team will end the mission by the end of the episode failing to fulfill their main objective in the eyes of the American government. Oh, and Braytak names the ark thing DJ and Carter stole the lava from the sepulchre of the temple. It's just a cool name. Though the lava is young and not ready for implantation, they have to risk it by implanting it into Teal'c. Luckily, the implantation does work out and saves Teal'c, but unluckily, Jafar soldiers notice the dead soldiers that DJ and Carter took care of earlier in the episode, and SG-1 must hurry back to the Stargate. Ryak is finally well enough to wake up and is happy to see his dad again, and when he's told that his printer has been successful through his father, the contrast between the naive faith that Ryak portrays and the sobering tragic truth that Teal'c feels just hurts. The fact that Teal'c has to say goodbye to his family once more also hurts. It also gives Christopher Judge some more emotions to portray rather than his usual stoic self. They follow Braytak's lead to return to the Stargate, and Braytak shows off once more how much of a badass he is. The Master and his students say goodbye, and then the episode ends. Bloodlines is a great episode in my opinion. Though not perfect, some questionable acting from the youngest cast member, it does provide a further insight into Teal'c's character, but it's also nice world building and somewhat a standalone episode. I give it a strong 7.5 out of 10. Episode 13, Fire and Water. Catherine Powers is back with a great episode that builds upon the SG-1 universe, as well as being a great vehicle to showcasing Michael Shanks's acting chops. This episode also marks the reappearance of Jared Plunkett, who plays the kinda antagonist, kinda not alien Nem. He previously played Counselor Tuplo, and he is the first of many actors to play multiple characters in the Stargate franchise. And though I believe Nem and his race never come back into the series after this episode, it's still a worthwhile watch. So let's get into it. O'Neill, Carter, and Teal'c return early from their mission to the planet of Ons. They seem traumatized, completely drenched and agitated, and the shocking cold open cliffhanger is that our good mate DJ had tragically died during the mission. After the opening, Frasier and her medical team tries to comfort and examine the surviving SG-1 team members, though all of them are extremely emotional and traumatized by DJ's death. Carter is distraught, O'Neill is more silent and brooding than usual, while even Teal'c has a slightly out-of-character outburst of emotion, in his case, anger. As they try to find out about what happened to DJ, all the members seem to relay a similar story, and I'll let them explain it.
Went through the Stargate at precisely 0700 this morning. The world we found on the other side appeared to be uninhabited.
So there was no immediate sign of danger.
There were these holes. Volcanic gas. I took some soil samples to test for minerals. Daniel...
Take your time.
He said, Colonel, help me. He was gone.
Gone.
Engulfed in fire, sir.
There's nothing you could have done, Colonel.
No, I swear to God, sir, I tried to get to him, but the heat was blasted toward us, and
And what did you do then?
there was a body of water somewhere nearby. It was like a lake. We all submerged ourselves. That's what saved us.
And by then,
By then, Daniel was gone. I ordered the team to evacuate.
we'll send a team through to recover the body.
No, sir. It's too volatile, sir. The whole area was very unstable.
Frasier then brings the results from her initial exams to Hammond. With the exception of some minor injuries and some photosensitivity, the team seems to be physically fine, though they seem to be suffering from quite severe PTSD symptoms. This scene is also one of the few times Frasier and Hammond disagree with each other, and shows that Frasier ain't just some itty-bitty side character. She's got a drive and passion to protect the people of Stargate Command, and she's not afraid to fight for their best care. DJ is given a full military funeral ceremony, a scene that had many real United States Air Force personnel in it. During their week off, so that Frasier can keep an eye on them, they also have a wake for DJ, but O'Neill experiences a flash of DJ on the planet Ons, and he reacts angrily at the confusing memory, and is even thinking about retiring. They are tasked with clearing out DJ's apartment, and Teal'c and Carter reveals that they've experienced the same flashes as O'Neill has had, and they all start to question whether or not DJ died on Ons. So, what actually happened to DJ? Let's go to the other plotline of the episode. DJ wakes up on the floor of some sort of laboratory, yelling for the other members of SG-1, but he soon realizes he's not alone when he's approached by a silent, menacing-looking aquatic alien. He introduces himself to the alien and tries to find out about the other members of SG-1. However, the alien produces some cuneiform language on the wall, and DJ quickly realizes that the alien wants him to translate some writings from an ancient Babylonian king, but struggles to figure out exactly what the alien wants from him, as the alien does not speak. Until...
It's a very old Earth writing. It's cuneiform. It's the first kind of writing we've ever found on my world. It's Akkadian, not Sumerian, so it's a tough one. Let me think. Reveal fate, Omar Aka. Reveal fate, Omaraka. Reveal fate, Omaraka. Omaraka, what is that? That's you? No, something else? I'm sorry, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't understand!
Luckily for DJ, the alien does not seem to be too particularly evil, as it provides him with a place to rest. The next time the alien visits DJ, it reveals that everyone already believes DJ is dead, and that the alien was the one who gave them the traumatic memories. DJ finally gets the alien to reveal that Omaroka was in fact its mate. And why has the alien kidnapped DJ? It's because DJ showed the possibility of understanding cuneiform, and therefore will be able to explain to the alien what fate Omaroka. Though DJ struggles to let the alien know that he doesn't know exactly what happened to Omaroka, as so much information about the ancient kingdom of Babylon has been destroyed throughout time. When the alien mentions the name Bellis, though, Something is there deep within his memories, but he struggles to remember. DJ tries to convince the alien to allow him to come to Earth with him so that they could do some research and find out if there's any documents that writes of Omeroka. But the alien is wary, as he has the belief that the fate of every human is to serve the Goa'uld, and that was something that Omeroka couldn't prevent. Also, at this moment, can I just pause right now to appreciate that the gills on the alien move like they're breathing through it? Ugh. But also really excellent makeup and prosthetics. DJ attempts to convince the alien that though Omeroka failed to fight the Goa'uld in her time, a successful rebellion did in fact happen in ancient Egypt afterwards, freeing humanity from the Goa'uld. After some time being trapped with the alien, and realizing that the alien has technology to manipulate human memories, DJ brings up the idea for the alien to use the technology to unearth the memories about Bellis, and how that historical figure connected to Omeroka. The alien is apprehensive at first, as it might cause permanent brain damage on DJ, but at this point, there's only about 10-ish minutes left on the episode, and DJ is getting desperate. Even when Bellis mentions that DJ might die, DJ is still willing to take the risk, all to get back to his friends and continue his mission in saving his wife. And this is where we finally get the truth of what happened to SG-1 on Owns when Carter is hypnotized to remember. In a flashback, as they're visiting Owns for the first time, the Owns setting is pretty much a beach that they CGI'd a couple of moons and a giant planet in the sky of. Out of the water, the alien Nem comes up to investigate the humans. It does not speak as it studies the members of the team, first approaching Teal'c and placing its hand over the pouch, seemingly able to sense the Goa'uld larva. It tries to communicate through cuneiform writing that Daniel recognizes, but as he introduces the team, the alien life forms seem to attack the other three, and we see fleeting images of what the memory manipulation technology seems to entail. The flashes of footage are more of what we have seen throughout the episode, and it shows the team strapped up and seemingly drugged up, but conscious somewhat. We cut back to the alien lab as DJ gets his memories dug through. It seems extremely painful, but it does end up being successful in bringing out the memories of a mention of Omeroka in an ancient text that Daniel had just happened to read in a textbook over a decade prior. I'll let him recite it.
Remember Omeroka.
Omeroka. And in that place there was Omeroka, a woman who came forth from the heavenly egg. I can't. Whoa, I can't. Who walked among men by day, but at night she would retreat to the great sea to sleep. One of the beings called Ohms. Yes. The god Bellis came down onto Babylon, onto the place of Omeroka, and cut the woman asunder. Oh God! I'm sorry. That's all I ever knew. I swear. He was a Goa'uld.
Yes. He murdered my love.
That's right. Unfortunately, Bellis, a Goa'uld, murdered Omeroka. And at this point in time, SG-1 has also returned back to the beach, and before anybody could do anything they regret, DJ manages to swim out of the lab and get back to shore to explain what happened to him. With the promise of becoming interplanetary allies, Nem lets SG-1 return to Earth, and the episode ends with its familiar soundtrack and friendly banter among the members of the team. Fire and Water could be seen as the closest thing to a filler episode like Emancipation, but sporting a more interesting episode concept, believable grief acting through 3/4 of its main cast, and some actual proper emotional conflict between characters, Fire and Water quite handily trumps Powers' earlier episode and is a much more engaging watch. I give it a 7 out of 10. Episode 14. Hathor. This episode is another quite important one to show how much influence the Goa'uld had on this universe's Earth. In the previous episode, we get a passing mention that an ancient Babylonian ruler, Bellis, was a Goa'uld, and in this episode, we get to see another Goa'uld pop up in a different part of the world, other than Egypt. It just shows that, like a cold sore, you never know where or when a Goa'uld will pop up. This episode is also the better one of the sexism in the military is bad duo of episodes in season 1 of SG-1. What did I say in the previous video about this episode? Future episode Hathor does the whole sexism, especially in the military, is bad. Much better in my opinion. Now this episode starts with a couple of scientists in Mexico unearthing a secret tomb in a Mayan temple only to find a sarcophagus inside. Confused as to how a seemingly Egyptian sarcophagus is inside, one of them muses about a journal article written by the one and only DJ about a connection between various ancient civilizations. The scientist chuckles as he remembers about the article, and the other informs him that one of the pictographs is of the Egyptian goddess Hathor. Breaking what seems to be at least 5 archaeological protocols, the male scientist, well, I guess he's an archaeologist if he's digging around burial mounds and Mayan temples. The male archaeologist accidentally activates the sarcophagus, and out comes Sue-Ann Brown as Hathor, who promptly kills everyone in the burial mound when she realizes they won't go old. The episode cuts to the SGC and the sarcophagus has been transported there. And DJ and O'Neill remember about the sarcophagus depicted in the Stargate movie and note the similarity of the sarcophagus in front of them. What's interesting is the sheer size of the sarcophagus prop that's almost completely shown all in one shot in this scene. You never see the full thing in the feature film, and the Mayan temple scene was quite dark and it was covered in dirt, but in this scene it's so chonky. An airman approaches Hammond and informs him that a female had just been arrested for attempting to enter the base, and that Hammond would like to talk to her as she somehow knew that the Stargate was there. It's an okay cold open cliffhanger, I think. After the opening sequence, the big boys squad, minus Teal'c, visit Hathor to try and question her. Hathor acts very Goa'uld-like, and DJ gives a Sparks Note version of who Hathor is in ancient Egypt lore. Being the gentleman that he is, DJ uncuffs Hathor and she thanks him for his efforts. We see that Hathor is able to create some sort of pink, to viewers, vapor that comes out of her mouth, and it seems to affect DJ in some way. Now, this is not a standard Goa'uld power, and I believe the show explains it later as a personal ability or technology that Hathor developed just for herself to further the image of being the Egyptian goddess of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Something to do with pheromones, I think they explain it as. As they're about to leave, Hathor manages to infect Hammond with the same effect she plays on DJ, and her foothold on the SGC has started. Great O'Neill line coming up.
Do we really think anyone's going to believe that woman if she goes around blabbing about a Stargate? Even this woman down in 73rd who walks around talking about these little devil people that live in her hair. Even though she could use a little conditioner.
DJ comes up to the debriefing room and breaks the news that Hathor might be the Goa'uld Hathor herself, though Carter, O'Neill, and even Teal'c doubt this. And though they are against DJ's suggestion of breaking protocol to let Hathor debrief them, since Hammond is already infected, of course Hammond agrees. The extreme close-ups that the director Brad Turner uses for this scene is unnerving, as we get to see so clearly how under the influence both characters are at this point. While the other characters are currently positioned a little bit far away from the two characters, they might miss the obvious strangeness of DJ's and Hammond's behavior until it's too late, while we're forced to see this unfolding without any chance of preventing it from happening. Quite quickly, after she arrives in the debriefing room, she manages to infect O'Neill, and even attempts to infect Teal'c. Note that for once, we don't actually see the shot of the haze of her power during the act of kissing Teal'c's hand. As the only woman in the room, Carter finally notices the strange behavior exhibited by her male colleagues, and confronts them, though she's unable to do anything. One broken protocol after another, the men provide allowances for Hathor that makes her foothold in the base so much easier to maintain. No guards by her quarters, full tour of the facilities. Carter tries to get her point across to O'Neill again, so far as to mention that the men in the base seem infatuated by Hathor, and painfully, as we know O'Neill is in pretty deep within Hathor's control, he doesn't see her concern. We cut to Hathor and DJ as they walk into the embarkation room. DJ mentions how Hathor is written to be able to control men with just her beauty as the most beautiful woman in history. Hathor then reveals that she is what's known as a Goa'uld queen, one of many, one that is capable of creating new larvae Goa'uld. Hathor explains that to create more Goa'uld larvae, she needs the code of life from the species that is about to become host, DNA. And she reveals that she quite enjoys the way to get DNA from humans as it is more pleasurable than most. A portion of DJ's true consciousness seeps out as he grabs Hathor's arm in a futile act of defiance against the idea of helping her make more Goa'uld, but Hathor uses more of her super pheromones to coerce him into the act. And can we just pause for a moment and fully appreciate that Hathor has probably sexually assaulted so many men in her past? This is a point that kind of gets swept over quite quickly, but considering the episode came out in 1997, it's still quite a dark concept to show on TV. Imagine if the sexes of the characters were reversed. Let's cut to something a bit more palatable. Frasier! Probably one of the best recurring characters ever created. Carter and Frasier discuss how the men of the base have been acting around Hathor, as Carter is researching about Hathor and the possibility that all sex goddesses in ancient cultures might be her. Though I don't think it's ever confirmed, Frasier does brainstorm a way that Hathor's technology could be utilized to infect the men in the base, and she mentions
Form of Goa'uld technology. Any ideas?
My guess would be some sort of chemical we've never seen. A sort of super pheromones combined with something like sodium pentothal, probably airborne delivery.
Great. How do we reverse it in the men?
Well, it may not be reversible, and if it is, it may take years.
I knew I remembered it correctly. The women of the SGC attempt to neutralize Hathor. Teal'c reveals that the gold in him prevents Hathor's powers from working on him. It has been mentioned in previous episodes that the lava does detoxify a lot of substances for Jafar. There's a very nice section of dialogue here between Frasier and Carter that subtly showcases the almost imperceptible little bit of sexism that seems to be in the SGC.
It's really necessary. I mean, somebody's bound to come on base and see what's going on here.
Yeah, and if they're male, they'll be under Hathor's control before they can think about it. Besides, when was the last time you saw a new woman get assigned here?
Now, this neutralization attempt is quickly thwarted when they find Hathor in a hydrotherapy whirlpool bath in the locker rooms, post-coitus, and the airmen act as literal human shields for Hathor while some others flank the women. Frasier, Carter, and the rest of the women are locked up in the brig. They further explain what the main thesis of this episode is.
Mama said there'd be days like this.
Really? My ex-husband said that. You got in your mind, honey buns? There is a reason they call it this man's army.
This man's army? Your husband actually said that?
Yeah, so of course I explained to him it wasn't the army, it was the Air Force, and they've had women for decades.
I mean, maybe it's just me, but I can't figure out how to feel like one of the guys with these guys, you know what I mean? I always feel like I'm the girl.
Carter's line provides Frasier with the idea to seduce the men, as the super pheromones seem to have affected them so simply that they turned them stupid horny. It works perfectly as they manage to escape the brig and retake the base. We cut to O'Neill and Hathor as she explains that to thank him for ridding the world of Ra in the feature film, she will gift him the honor of being her new Jafar, as the episode dips its toes into a little bit of its trademarked body horror. This also gives more confirmation that Jafar were once human that were experimented on. We cut to the locker rooms again, and Carter is able to catch Hathor rise from the whirlpool, now filled with lots of teeny tiny gold lava. She places O'Neill into the bathtub and explains that soon the strongest lava will crawl into his pouch, and then he would become a full-fledged Jafar. Once Hathor leaves the locker room and Teal'c is able to take O'Neill out of the bath, Janet does not hesitate to place her hand straight into O'Neill's pouch to see if a lava has entered it, and luckily, one hasn't. They quickly bring O'Neill to the sarcophagus, still in the embarkation room, and places O'Neill in it, hoping that the sarcophagus can keep him alive until they can figure out what to do. A couple of soldiers under Hathor's influence enter the embarkation room and just start slugging bullets into our characters. Janet gets shot in the arm, Teal'c suffers a couple of wounds. The sarcophagus opens and Hathor, attracted by all the chaos, orders the soldiers to stop shooting, afraid that a stray bullet would then kill her first new Jafar. Luckily, seems like the sarcophagus was in the human setting, as when O'Neill sits up, his old self comes back, sans Jafar pouch. In her anger of losing her first Jafar, Hathor uses the telekinesis powers from her hand device, but O'Neill managed to dodge it, and it only ended up screwing with the internals of the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus starts to lose control of its power source, and both sides leave the embarkation room just before it exploded and killed all of them. The team's luck of keeping advanced technology continues. O'Neill and Carter ambush Hathor in the locker room again, as the Gold Queen harvests more lava. They manage to take out the Air Force members keeping guard, and before Hathor could do any serious damage to any of the characters, Carter takes out her pistol and shoots at Hathor, seemingly knocking her out. Some sparks from the bullets hitting the metal fittings in the locker room sets the liquid in the whirlpool bath on fire, which begs a question, what the hell was in that liquid? DJ, thick under the influence of Hathor's super pheromones, is especially sad by Hathor's apparent death. The fiery liquid also likely manages to kill all the lava that were in the bathtub. O'Neill and Carter manage to drag the tranked Air Force men away from the flaming bath before they get burned, and as they take the last of the unconscious men, we see a flickering through the flames and hear sound effects, and we see Hathor step out of the bathtub and escape the locker room while DJ is still entranced by the flames. The unauthorized gate activation alarm plays, and O'Neill and Carter enter the control room just in time to see Hathor escape through the Stargate. The address she puts in is Chulak, but who knows how long she stays there. Now that Hathor is gone, it seems like her connection and super pheromone powers were also cut off, as DJ seemed to revert to normal. In the aftermath, Hammond is finally back up and running, and Carter is all tense since she had to knock the general out earlier to keep him out of danger. And as she's trying to explain her actions, thinking she's going to be reprimanded, Hammond informs them that he's putting Carter and Frasier up for a commendation medal. And that's how the episode finishes. All in all, an okay episode. Strong of performances in general. Amanda Tapping as Carter is probably still the weakest in terms of acting chops, but she's getting there. And it felt like Emancipation was early in the filming block compared to Hathor, so the extra time spent acting on the other episodes seemed to have helped her improve in her performance. I give the episode a 6.5 out of 10. Episode 15. Singularity. Robert C. Cooper is back, so you know this episode is going to be a banger. And originally I wanted to end the first part of this season 1 recap on this episode, as it's the last episode to have originally aired in 1997, but the first video already ended up being just under 3 hours, so imagine how long the video would have been if I had added the recap of episodes 12 to 15. Anywho, let's get right into the recap. The cold open starts with SG-1 visiting the planet PX-8987, known to the locals as Hunker. We see a sign on Hunker that shows that SG-7 seems to have been the main team that explored the planet initially, and that this isn't one of the first times that an SG team has visited Hunker. In fact, they've already built some sort of observatory already. SG-1 is going to Hunker in the hopes to witness and study a black hole during an eclipse. However, when SG-1 walks through the gate, they notice that the area seems suspiciously empty, as someone from SG-7 should have been there greeting them. Walking down the path, they discover one of the natives collapsed on the side of the road, covered in terrible looking sores. The three humans quickly place on protective masks and gloves to prevent themselves from being contaminated further by the disease that seems to have affected the Hunkans. O'Neill orders Teal'c and DJ to go check the village, while Carter and himself will investigate the observatory to see if anybody managed to survive the outbreak. Cut to the observatory, the place is silent. Lights are off, no work is being done. Carter and O'Neill manage to find SG-7 all in the sleeping quarters, dead and covered in the sores. DJ and Teal'c arrive soon after and reveals that everyone in the village have also died by the same disease. A pretty strong cold open, if I may say so myself. It sets up an intriguing mystery. It's the first time, I believe, that we see SG teams return to a planet weeks after initial contact, unlike a day or a few days after, like in the Broken Divide and Fire and Water, and it shows a little bit of their cohabitation protocols with the locals. After the opening theme, we see that more members of the SGC have arrived on Hunker and set up a decontamination suite so that the actors don't have to wear the masks and gloves the whole episode. Frasier is back. She asks how many have died from the disease, and Carter reveals that approximately 1,000 people have died. Everyone is a bit confused as to why there was no contact for help, and DJ theorizes that whatever happened must have happened extremely quickly. Frasier orders O'Neill to be examined first, as he had touched the roadside body before realizing it was covered in the sores, and as they walk to the barracks, DJ sneezes and everyone stares at him before O'Neill says,
Allergies, right? Right.
Right.
Later, after getting the all clear from Frasier, SG-1 travels throughout the village area to tag the dead bodies they find. When Carter places one on a body, a mysterious hand reaches out from the bushes and takes it away when she turns her back. Hearing the rustling, Carter turns around and sees movement in the bushes, and they soon find out it's a little girl and that she's the only survivor. The girl is clearly traumatized as she refuses to speak and clings onto the dead body tag that she just grabbed. Later, looking at the girl's blood work, Frasier is shocked. Not because the girl is infected, but because there are traces of the element that the Stargate is made of, naquadah. And that's correct. This is the first episode that the term naquadah appears. Robert C. Cooper, you've done it again.
McCain, you've done it again.
Frasier reveals to the rest of SG-1 that the disease is something bacterial. And though it's not airborne, it's able to survive in varied environments, and that the whole area has been completely contaminated. Luckily, everyone in SG-1 is also cleared from the infection. And since the girl is not contaminated and doesn't have a goa'uld in her, then she's coming back to Earth with them. Carter wants a small team to stay to get data about the black hole during the eclipse, as if they simply leave now, then it seems that SG-7 and all the Hunkans would have died for nothing. And since the girl seems to have latched onto Carter, she's forced to go back to Earth. Teal'c and O'Neill will stay to collect the data instead. Teal'c because the goa'uld larva protects him from the disease naturally, and O'Neill because he likes space. At this point, the story breaks into two plots in the two locations, one on Earth with Carter and the little girl, and one on Hunker with O'Neill and Teal'c. Things don't happen much on Hunker for a while, so let's focus on the Carter and the girl storyline for a bit. Back on Earth, Carter manages to keep the girl calm as she steps through the gate to a whole nother world, and after leading the girl to her quarters, Carter mentions that she has to go, but that she will return. However, the girl grabs onto her shirt to prevent her from leaving, and noticing the fear in the girl's eyes at the prospect of being left alone again, Carter decides to spend more time with the girl. Later, we see through a camera feed that the girl's quarters have been thankfully redesigned with some child-friendly fixtures rather than its original drabness, and it seems like the girl has fully bonded with Carter. In the conference room, Hammond questions DJ and Fraser about what seemed to have happened on Hunker, and Fraser reveals that the full death count was 1,432 people, and that she believes that the SG teams may have been indirectly responsible, bringing a normally harmless bacteria from Earth to the planet and having that bacteria mutate on the planet. Though they now know more about the disease, the question remains, SG-7 never contacted for help during the outbreak. That night, DJ enters the girl's quarters to tell Carter she has a call, and as Carter tries to explain to the girl that she needs to go somewhere, but that she won't be left alone as DJ will be there, the girl grabs her arm and says her first words to Carter, "Please don't go." The girl reveals her name, Cassandra, and that she's hurting somewhere in her chest. We cut to Cassandra getting checked up by Fraser, but she can't seem to find anything. The latest blood test reveals that Cassandra has a potassium deficiency that suddenly appeared, but nothing else. Since there's nothing left to do, they start to leave the lab, and we see Cassandra even smiling at Fraser when Cassandra doubles over in pain and looks like she lost consciousness straight away. Luckily, Carter is able to catch her before she falls and places her back onto the table. Fraser notices Cassandra is no longer breathing, calls a code blue, and starts to provide the little girl with CPR, and they manage to restart Cassandra's heart, but as Fraser is listening to the heartbeat, she hears something else, something that makes her order a chest x-ray, stat. Carter listens, and along with Cassandra's heartbeat, we hear some strange buzzing noise. The chest x-ray shows some sort of growth has appeared right above Cassandra's heart and lungs that were not there hours earlier. They try to do a biopsy as the growth in the Cassandra's chest is part metallic but also part organic, but when some samples are scraped off, Cassandra's heart stops beating, and as soon as they are about to use the defibrillator, her heart restarts. From the little amount of the samples that they could get, they realize that one part of the growth is made of iron and potassium, while the other part is made of naquita. And the test also reveals that the fatty tissue in between the two parts is slowly decaying, bringing the two parts together. To test what would happen when the two parts touched each other, Carter runs an experiment in the sub-basement floor of the SGC complex, in a room that's lead-sealed. Two robotic arms with a microscopic sample of potassium and naquita slowly reach towards each other, and the instant the two touch, the whole room disappears in an explosion. Later, in the conference room, they explain that the Goa'uld basically turned Cassandra into a Trojan horse. Using their technology, they killed everyone at the Hunkan village and made it look like it was the SGC's fault, knowing that the humans would then bring Cassandra back to Earth. The growth, the bomb, inside Cassandra was designed to stay hidden until she passed through the Stargate before activating. Fraser reveals that due to the rate of decay on the sample that they were able to collect, they have just under 2 hours until the bomb detonates. As the time counts down, Carter struggles with coming to the full understanding that Cassandra will die as she's grown attached to the girl. After a mere 30 minutes, Hammond has to tell the devastating news to Carter that they have to get Cassandra back to Hunker and let the bomb inside her detonate there, leaving the little girl all alone for her last moments of life. The plan is she and SG-4 will return to Hunker and they'll get O'Neill and Teal'c to return with them then. As they're dialing to Hunker, Cassandra suddenly slips into a coma. But what's been happening to Teal'c and O'Neill all this time? Not much. A couple of quick scenes of comic relief as the two wait for the eclipse to happen.
This is fun.
Once the eclipse finally happens, they're awed by what they're able to see or what they're unable to see because it's a black hole. But then they notice something nearby in space through the telescope. When they get a clear view of the anomaly, Teal'c gravely informs O'Neill that it's a Goa'uld attack vessel, a Hathor ship of the Goa'uld Nearty, one of Apophis's enemies. Sometime soon later, O'Neill and Teal'c are rushing back towards the Stargate as two Death Gliders hunt them down. As they hide on an embankment for a bit, Teal'c tells O'Neill of a previous encounter Apophis had with Nearty, and it seems that Nearty has a penchant for explosives when certain people walk through the Stargate, and O'Neill quickly figures out that something must be up about Cassandra. The two men manage to reach the Stargate and dial back to Earth right before Cassandra and the rest step through the Stargate and warns everyone that Cassandra cannot ever walk through a Stargate again. Now, as the bomb in Cassandra is still on a timer, they decide to move Cassandra to a disused abandoned nuclear facility only about 20 minutes away from the mountain base. When they reach there, they mention that the lead-lined vault is several levels below ground, and O'Neill warns Carter that she only has a limited amount of time before the two parts of the bomb would touch and detonate, so once she places Cassandra in the vault, she has to hurry back up. However, as Carter and Cassandra travel down the elevator, Cassandra wakes up from her coma, and Carter is horrified at the prospect of abandoning the girl while she's conscious. Once they reach the vault, Carter tells Cassandra that she has to go. Understandably, Cassandra is unhappy as Carter had promised to never leave her alone, but Carter promises that she will be back. She locks Cassandra in the vault and fully breaks down on the elevator ride up. This is where Amanda Tapping is able to absolutely shine as she performs the breakdown quite believably. A far cry from what characterization she was given in Children of the Gods. Carter changes her mind and goes back down to Cassandra, revealing to the others through the building's comms system that Cassandra woke up. It's a tense last minute as the timer counts down, and Cassandra and Carter hug in an attempt to comfort each other, while the rest of the team wait at the surface. The timer hits 0, but nothing happens, which shocks everyone. After a moment, Carter contacts back and explains that she noticed that Cassandra's health worsened as she got closer to the Stargate, but got better when she got far enough away, and Carter simply...
I couldn't leave her, sir.
How did you know, Captain?
It occurred to me that she first slipped into the coma when we brought her close to the Stargate. As soon as we got her far enough away from the Stargate, she woke up. And I knew.
Sometime later, all of SG-1 are out in public. Teal'c with a dazzling hat to cover his apophis sigil on his forehead, with Cassandra who looks happy and healthy. O'Neill arrives and he has brought her a puppy, explaining that a rule on Earth is that every kid has to have a dog as a pet. And this seems to be a rule Cassandra is very happy about. DJ asks Carter how sure she was truly in the moment in the vault, and Carter struggles to explain it. Teal'c chimes in, suggesting that it must have been some sort of motherly instinct. They talk about what's going to happen to Cassandra moving forward. For now, Frasier will foster Cassandra until and if a couple with the right level of clearance comes along to adopt her. Carter explains that after some time away from the Stargate, the bomb in Cassandra had started to shrink and be reabsorbed into her system. The men take Cassandra's new dog for a walk at this point and allow Carter and Cassandra to speak in private. Cassandra understands that she can't ever talk to anyone about her being a hunkin and the Stargate, and the episode ends with Cassandra wondering what swings are and Carter leading her towards the swings. What a wonderful episode, truly. Also, a great positive end to leave on for a couple of months for those who watched the show as it was airing. Let's tally the positives quickly. The episode had great character moments for Carter. There's a nice reminder that O'Neill likes space, with him offering himself up to witness the eclipse to get data on the black hole. And every episode with Frasier is always a plus. When it comes to universe building, this episode was quite heavy. Introduction of Naquadah as the name of the Stargate element. Introduction of Nearty, an Apophis contemporary that is antagonistic towards Apophis, which is a great and subtle introduction of gold politics. We saw a glimpse of this in Hathor when she sees Teal'c for the first time and makes a comment on Apophis, but it's explored a little bit more in this episode as well. There's the introduction of a Hathak vessel, introduction of Cassandra as a recurring character, because yes, we do get to see her again a couple more times. And there's also that affirmation that every time they go out to a different planet, not only do they have to worry about bringing diseases back to Earth from those planets, they also have to make sure that they don't bring Earth diseases to the planets as well. It's very nice universe logic that makes the show's universe a little bit more believable. All in all, a very solid episode in terms of universe building, with quite a few moving moments too, so I give it an 8 out of 10. Episode 16, Cor-ai. Now, this is not really a fun fact about the show or the episode itself, but this episode originally aired on my 4th birthday. I feel old. Now, the events in Cor-ai are not anything groundbreaking. I think it's a pretty interesting thought experiment to have every time you have a character that has not always been a good person. What happens when their less than savory past catches up to them? This idea is so good, in fact, that a similar episode appears in Season 9's The Powers That Be and Stargate Atlantis' Season 3 episode, Satida. But we're not up to those yet, so let's stop talking about that and let's get into this episode. Cor-ai starts off with SG-1 arriving on a grassy planet, Cartago. The area right at the gate looks like some sort of medieval market. However, the place is empty. Teal'c does recognize being to the planet before, describing it as a harvest planet for the Goa'uld, a planet where they would visit when they require more hosts for the Goa'uld larva. Carter notes that the food is fresh and a fire nearby is still on with some food cooking, so the area is completely and recently abandoned. SG-1 continue exploring further and enter one of the nearby buildings. It looks like some sort of courtroom, because it is, and then the team is quickly ambushed by the locals. The two groups come to a mutual understanding, lowering weapons when the leader of the locals noticed Teal'c, not just as a random Jafar, but as the Jafar who killed the man's father. After the opening sequence, we go straight back to the holdup. Through diegetic dialogue, we learn that the leader of the locals is named Hathor, and that Hathor has to keep some sort of mandates. We'll find out a little bit more about these mandates soon enough. Hathor's friend brings up the possibility that Teal'c might not be the Jafar who killed Hathor's father, but the man is very adamant that he's correct. Hathor's friend brings up the concept of the episode title, Cor-ai, and Hathor agrees. Outside, they see the local population start to come back to the market. Hathor explains why they disappeared in the first place.
When the gods come through the Sir Kokona, we scatter in many directions to hide from those who would hurt us.
Listening to Hathor's explanation, DJ quickly works out that the locals' name for the Stargate is Cirque Kokona, meaning Circle of Woes, which does not give a positive vibe to the team. After Hathor speaks to the elders, who were some of those that have returned back from scattering, an elder allows the rest of SG-1 to leave. However, Teal'c has to stay for the Cor-ai. To jog Teal'c's memories, Hathor shows him an old makeshift crutch, and finally Teal'c remembers who Hathor and his father was, as when Teal'c was still working as Apophis's first prime, he had to kill Hathor's father, a cripple, to set an example. An event that was witnessed by a very young boy. Also, it's the return of Apophis, who we haven't seen since the knock, so that's pretty cool. O'Neill orders Teal'c to not say anything, but it's clear that Teal'c remembers, and he is brought into custody. Now, most of the episode is set in the courtroom area, where the Cor-ai is held. A lot of the drama in the episode is in trying to figure out how to save Teal'c from the death sentence, as unlike trials on Earth, the ultimate judge in Cartago's Cor-ai's is the victim, him or herself, which is obviously very biased. The first part of the Cor-ai can easily be summed up with Teal'c pleads guilty to killing Hathor's father because it's the truth. Now obviously Cor-ai is quickly becoming another Teal'c-centric episode, so let's begin with some really great character building moments for our favourite Jafar. Number 1. Teal'c outright refuses any interference from the rest of SG-1, as he does not and cannot deny that he was the one who killed Hathor's father. 2. It's heavily implied in the directing during the memory sequences that Teal'c was already in his doubting era, and the killing of Hathor's father had affected him emotionally greatly. 3. Even in the face of receiving capital punishment, Teal'c goes against O'Neill's orders to not answer any questions on the Cor-ai, and answers them truthfully, showcasing his honor and his uncompromising belief in justice. And 4, it's revealed and pretty much explored throughout the episode that Teal'c believes himself guilty of the verdict of death for the things that he did as first prime of Apophis, and he does not believe in justifying his actions. A core motivator for his actions so far in the series and in the future seems to be to try and not so much rectify all that he had done, but to bring things to a balance in some way, so that nobody else has to suffer through what he went through, as well as what he had caused people to go through. Throughout the events of the Cor-ai, we learn more context about the death of Hathor's father, an event so fundamental in Hathor's belief as he grew up. All he could see is the black and whiteness of the event. His father was helpless and a cripple, and the fact that Teal'c made no attempt to not kill the poor man makes the Jafar completely guilty of a cold and heartless murder. However, early on, we don't get that at all in the memory sequences. We see the doubt and struggle in Teal'c's face, as Apophis is almost literally breathing down his neck, looking over his shoulder. Hathor's father does not even look distraught at all. In fact, he looks like he's accepted his death, and we get to find out more context of why that might seem so to us viewers later in the episode. Oh, here's a really good sequence that I thought I should just let you see straight up without commentary. It brings to light Teal'c's guilt over his past deeds as first prime.
What happened? Apophis ordered me to kill Hanno's father.
So you were following orders?
Hanno's father died by my hand. No one else's. I am responsible. What I did while serving Apophis, I will not hide from.
Even if the punishment is death?
Then that is what I deserve.
Teal'c, you sound like you want to die.
Colonel O'Neill, have you ever faced the crying eyes of a child? whose father you have just murdered.
Not exactly. Teal'c, there are a lot of things we do and we wish we could change, and we sure as hell can't forget. But the whole concept of chain of command undermines the idea of free will. So as soldiers, we have to do some pretty awful stuff. But we're following orders like we were trained to. It doesn't make it easier. It certainly doesn't make it right. But it does put some of the responsibility on the guy given those orders.
Then you are saying Apophis is responsible for Hanno's father's death?
Yes!
You are wrong, O'Neill. While in the service of Apophis, I did many things. For these deeds, my victims deserve retribution.
Strong performances from both RDA and Christopher Judge, and the close-ups, though not as extreme as the ones we saw in Hathor, still gives us the impression that the two characters are trapped and forced to open up to each other about a subject matter that, as they are both soldiers, are crucial to both of them. The second half of the Cor-ai is about to begin as the locals, Carter and DJ walk back into the courtroom. From what he could find out exploring outside, DJ explains that this phase of the Cor-ai is similar to the sentencing phase of a trial on Earth, and the only thing that they can do is to try and prove that Teal'c doesn't deserve to die as his punishment. The team uses DJ's testimony about Cor-ai in an attempt to show that Teal'c is now kinda repenting for all the horrible deeds that he has done. There are a few great shots that show the locals' confusion to the fact that even though Teal'c was responsible for Cor-ai becoming a gold host, DJ works side by side with him and trusts him with his own life. The alienness of empathy in the locals is a nice touch to remind the viewer that even though these people are humans, their culture is vastly different from ours. Their understanding is vastly different from our understanding. The testimonies continue with the SG members questioning Teal'c and asking him to describe the events of Children of the Gods. After his own testimony, DJ explores the market area and talks to a local. It's clear that their culture exists in a pretty idyllic state, sans Goa'uld and Jafar harvests. DJ asks the local, who's had lines previously, about where they actually live, as the area around the gate seemed to just be market stalls and the Cor-ai chamber, but no residential buildings. The woman reveals that they sleep in a place called the Hiding. She reveals that the locals actually live in caves and tunnels that go absolutely everywhere, and that whenever the Goa'uld come through the Stargate, they will scatter and hide. Though she does reveal a very important piece of context here. She explains that the locals have a code that they don't leave anyone behind. So either everybody hides or nobody hides when the Stargate comes to life. Realizing the importance of that cultural context, DJ gets Teal'c to give a more detailed version of events that led him to killing Hanno's father. And we get to see a fuller version of events in the flashback, as it's revealed that if Teal'c had not killed one person, Apophis would have killed the whole village. In an act that could be seen as malicious compliance, Teal'c actually notices Hanno's father missing a leg, who seems to be holding out his hand now in a silent gesture, pleading for Teal'c to choose him. So Teal'c shoots the man. The vilest thing about Teal'c's story, and it's a great piece of writing as well, is the fact that Hanno's father didn't have to die at all, since Apophis already chose 7 women to become Goa'uld hosts and had decided to let the rest of the village go, but he just wanted somebody to die because he could. O'Neill has already noticed that even with the newly revealed context, Hanno will most likely still call for Teal'c's death. So while DJ and Teal'c go back into the courtroom, Carter and O'Neill go back to the SGC to try and get Hammond to agree to send some reinforcements to scare the locals enough to hand Teal'c back before they kill him. At the courtroom, DJ attempts to explain that Teal'c's actions were for the good of the whole village, since culturally, they don't leave anyone behind. It's obvious that the only reason why the villagers were caught that day was because Hanno's father was too slow to make it to the Hiding in time when Apophis and his Jafar came. And the most infuriating part of this, that can be written off as the death of his father being a most seminal part of his course growing up, is that Hanno is annoyingly and willfully blind to the point that DJ is trying to make when he's revealing to the locals this context. So much so that he even says,
"How fast could your father move with only one leg?"
It was not important. As a member of the clan, he would never be left behind.
So in other words, your group can only move as fast as its slowest member, right? Teal'c, why did you choose Hanno's father?
I saw his injury. I knew that without him the group could move more quickly, perhaps even evade us the next time we came.
No, I will not hear this.
So you made a decision. You chose to kill one that day to save many later. Is that right?
It is correct.
So if Teal'c hadn't made that decision, Many of you might not be alive today to want him dead.
I do not understand the relevance of any of this.
Bruh, yeah you do. You're so annoyingly gung-ho to killing Teal'c that you're just choosing not to understand. But like I said, at least, as an audience member, we can attempt to be in Hanno's shoes and justify this reaction. It's annoyingly dim of him, but it's at least understandable. Though this little sassy comment Hanno makes will never stop pissing me off.
Your argument is wise and moving. I commend you. You have made a compelling argument that this Jafar's more recent and continuing good should somehow negate his past evil. I have but one final question. Can his recent actions, or any future actions, return my father from the dead?
Shut up, Hanno. Just because I can empathize with you slightly doesn't mean I have to like you. Hanno's blindness, because of his longing for revenge for the murder of his father, annoyingly stops him from recognizing that all this time, SG-1 was never trying to erase what Teal'c had done in his past, but trying to showcase that even with that past, he has been willing to be better and has striven to be better, not to forget about his past or to negate his past deeds, but to leave the world as a whole a better place in spite of his past deeds. So, at the end of the Cor-ai, Hanno sentences Teal'c to die by his own staff weapon the next day at noon. Back at the SGC, Hammond has to tell O'Neill and Carter that he can't authorize sending reinforcements to interfere in the affairs of the peoples of another planet. O'Neill beautifully compares himself to Teal'c, as they are both soldiers who have had to do some very, very questionable and vile things for the leaders that they both served under.
General Hammond, I have spent a lot of years in the service of my country. And I have been ordered to do some damn distasteful things. I will not allow them to execute my friend.
However, Hammond is obviously stuck between a rock and hard place. When Carter and O'Neill arrive back on Cartago, they see that there's been an attack as market stalls are on fire or tipped over, or both. And not finding Teal'c or DJ in Teal'c's cell, Carter and O'Neill gets into a little firefight with some of Apophis's Serpent guards. Teal'c and DJ have been holed up in the courthouse as Hanno believes that O'Neill and Carter have somehow been in cahoots with the Goa'uld. He orders the women and children to stay, while the men attempt a distraction outside. The distraction outside ends up working a little too well, but O'Neill is able to save Hanno and the local men by killing the Serpent guards chasing after them. In the courtroom, after blocking all of the bursars, oh yeah, that's the name of the local people group. After blocking all of the bursars' escape tunnels, the Serpent guard find the women and children hiding with DJ and Teal'c, and we find out that Apophis's new first prime is none other than Shackle. Seeing the danger, a child hands Teal'c a knife to cut out of his bindings with, which he does so quite quickly. Just before Shackle executes Teal'c, our boy manages to get payback for the rude stabbing that he experienced in the episode The Nox, ensuring that Shackle is not first prime of Apophis for much longer. Seeing a group of Bursar innocents in danger, Teal'c is shot as he tackles a Serpent guard away, and before the last Serpent guard can kill him, O'Neill, Hanno, and the others arrive in time to save him. DJ wants to bring Teal'c back to Earth to fix up his staff wound injury. However, Teal'c walks towards Hanno on his shot leg like a bamf and hands the staff weapon over to Hanno, saying that he's prepared to accept his punishment. In light of the recent attack, the fact that he had been wrong about O'Neill and Carter, and the fact that more would have been hurt or wounded had Teal'c not put his life at risk by fighting back against the Serpent guards, realization finally hits Hanno's thick head, seeing that the Teal'c that killed his father is no longer the Teal'c that stands before them today. O'Neill promises to help the Bursar people defend themselves from Goa'uld attacks in the future, something that Hanno gladly accepts, and he leaves to help the wounded Bursar, leaving Teal'c holding back tears, emotionally moved by Hanno's forgiveness. Except for a little bit of dry trial proceedings, Cor-ai proceedings, and Hanno's initial annoyingness, the episode Cor-ai is a pretty great episode. Yes, it's extremely episodic in nature, and it's also almost a complete bottle episode, but its focus on Teal'c, one of the show's fastest growing fan favorite characters, not that any of the main cast aren't beloved, and overall strong performances from all its cast, I can imagine Cor-ai being a great episode to come back to after the Christmas break. And we also get introduced to the concept of Goa'uld harvest planets, and there's also a great exploration of Teal'c's character all at the same time, so I give the episode 7.5 out of 10. Episode 17, Enigma. I'm going to be forthcoming right now and say that I'm not a big fan of this episode in general. And it's not because the themes of the episodes are basic or any particular writing or performance issues. Well, I guess it's a little bit about the writing in terms of how dry a lot of it is. Now, we've had a few episodes already that are pretty much political drama being played out in episodes. Like, hell, the last episode was basically a court episode, but with aliens. However, whereas Hanno seems to be the most infuriating one in Cor-ai, Enigma has a couple of annoying characters, some you don't see again, as they were guest stars that the show probably couldn't afford a second time, and others that are improved upon in later episodes, but since this is their first appearance, they're a bit too rough around the edges for my liking. And look, it's not as terrible as Emancipation. I still enjoyed my rewatch for this recap, but something about the episode was a little disappointing, though I'm finding it hard to fully express and explain. It does introduce quite a few universe building concepts though, so that's nice. I'll explain along the way. The episode begins with a bang, almost literally, as SG-1 travels to a planet that seems to be on the verge of being destroyed through a natural disaster. Explosions are heard in the distance, ash is falling from the sky, and before DJ dials the gate back to Earth, they find several humans unconscious right by the gate, slowly being covered by the ash. One of the natives of the planet awakens when he hears Carter's voice, only to pass out soon after. And another one of the natives cryptically says,
"Don't help us."
After the opening sequence, we cut to the embarkation room, and SG-1 has finished bringing back the last of the native people that they found by the gate. During the debriefing, Hammond asks several questions about the refugees they've brought back from the planet, and DJ explains that it seems that the Tolans seem to be way ahead of Earth in terms of technology. They go and meet with the spokesperson for the people they rescued, and fans of horror might recognize this iconic voice and the iconic face of Tobin Bell, best known for playing John Kramer or Jigsaw in the Saw franchise. I know, I totally forgot about him being in this role. Sadly, this episode is the only episode he appears in. Tobin Bell's character is abrasive and condescending, calling Earthlings primitive. He's not happy that SG-1 saved the Tolans as there was a rescue transport on the way, though O'Neill points out that half of the people by the gate were already dead without any sign of transport coming. Tobin Bell's character surprises everyone when he responds to Teal'c, knowing that he's a Jafar, and this is when Tobin Bell's character reveals his name and the world that they came from, Omok of the planet Tolan. The way that Omok talks about the Goa'uld is extremely dismissive, as if the Goa'uld is simply a bother for the people of Tolan. And the meeting ends sourly when Omok simply demands that the SGC return everything they took from the Tolans and allow them to return to their planet. DJ points out that it might take a while for the volcanic activity to die down to an acceptable level and asks to learn more about Tolan culture and history, but Omok rudely shuts him down. As the team walks out, the same Tolan that saw Carter in the cold open has finally regained his consciousness, and he and Carter glance at each other. It's obvious from how he's acting that he's probably going to obsess over her somewhat. Carter is tasked with keeping an eye out on the situation on Tolan, and while preparing a mini UAV, DJ reveals that he's been struggling to get any info out of the Tolans, though one of the Tolans have been asking a lot of questions about Carter. Hammond believes that if she indulges this particular Tolan's curiosity, she might be able to get some information about the race out of them. Carter goes to meet the Tolan, Nareem, and they start talking. She's able to take him out to the surface. He reveals that he's glad to have been saved, and so are some of the others. Nareem starts to explain about the concept of the Shamal, an old belief the Tolans had before they went all scientifical, and Carter connects the Shamal legend to angels on Earth, and Nareem smoothly rizzes Carter.
When I saw you,
What?
an old superstition. There was a time before reason and science when my ancestors believed in all manner of nonsense. Like the Shamal. The story goes that if a Shamal appears at the moment of death, she will take you to her dwelling in the stars.
Ah, we call them angels.
Then you still believe them?
Some of us do.
Ours were reported to be quite beautiful. When I saw you, well, you seem to fit the description.
Their conversation is cut when Nareem hears the cry of an eagle and sees one flying around. He's amazed by the sight, and he sadly reveals that all the animals on Tolan had died generations ago. Seeing that connection point, Carter offers to bring him some pictures of other Earth animals, and Nareem likes the idea, though he suggests keeping their interactions a secret from Omok for now. He vaguely says that Omok only acts the way he does to protect the Tolans and Earthlings. With their first conversation done, the SGC finally finished preparing the mini UAV, and it's launched through the gate to Tolan. Let's see what the weather's like over there.
Successful launch. Temperature, ground 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. Air Seems to be in pockets ranging from 1,500 degrees down to 200.
Sounds like LA.
If the heat doesn't get you, the atmosphere will. It's mostly pyroclastics, basalt, ash. A person could suffocate very quickly.
How long before it cools down?
I don't know, not anytime soon.
Doesn't look like it'll matter anyway. That lava's flowing straight toward the gate.
Computer predicts that at the current rate, the gate will be buried in a couple of days.
Yeah, looks like we've got some guests for a while.
They break the news to Omok, who opens up slightly to reveal that they were going to seal the gate themselves, but it seems like they won't have to anymore. He reveals that the planet the Tolans were settling on is outside of the gate system, and that they would need a spaceship to get there. And when Carter and DJ reveals that Earth don't have spaceships yet, the look of utter annoyance and judgment appears on Omok's face. Knowing that the Tolans can't stay here because they wouldn't hear the end of Omok's bitching, the SGC attempt to relocate the Tolans that were rescued to another planet. While they're waiting for responses from other allies that they've met in the galaxy so far, sometime later, Hammond informs SG-1 that the Tolans have disappeared and escaped, and they don't know how. A quick search on the surface ends up with them finding the group of Tolans out in the woods around Cheyenne Mountain, like a cult. Omok explains that they were only looking at the stars, like a cult, and when O'Neill tells them that they have to go back into the base, Omok muses that the Tolans are in fact prisoners. The next morning, the Tolans meet Tuplo and the Touched from the episode The Broker Divide, and once again, Omok is rude and brash, calling Tuplo and his people even more primitive than Earth. Later, Carter is chatting with Nareem, and Nareem reveals some more history of what happened to Tolan. The nearest planet in Tolan's solar system was called Sarita. When the Tolans started to explore space, they discovered that there was life on Sarita, and they had made contact with the Saritans when the Tolans believed Saritans had advanced technologically enough, revealing that the Saritans were quite close to Earth in that aspect. However, when the Tolans wanted to help them out by introducing them to a device that could produce infinite energy, they were horrified when the Saritans used the technology to start a war that ultimately ravaged the whole planet and killed every Saritan in one Tolan day. The destruction was so bad that it actually affected the orbit of Tolan that caused a series of unfortunate events that led to its volcanic destruction. The reason why Omok is so brash to Earthlings and is so fixated of the primitiveness of a culture is because of what happened to the Saritans. He didn't want the same thing to be repeated. Nareem also revealed that the Tolans were in fact on the surface to study the stars to figure out how far away Earth is from the new Tolan planet, and unfortunately, it is extremely far away. So much so that no ship that Earth can produce in the Tolans' lifetimes will reach it. There's a scene here where Omok is threatening SG-1 that they can escape whenever they want to. It's not really important, but after that, SG-1 meets with Walter, who's then been able to clean up the CCTV footage so that they can see how the Tolans escaped from their quarters in the first place to go to the surface. It looks kind of goofy, 90s CG and everything, but the Tolans simply walked out of their quarters by walking through walls and doors, and that's when they're interrupted by the bastard that you love to hate, Colonel Harold Mayborn. Tom McBeath really worked overtime every time he portrays Mayborn. He's smarmier than Smarmy Samuels, he's more arrogant than even the Goa'uld like Apophis or Hathor, and he seems to capture everyone's attention in every scene he's in. It also helps that Mayborn is involved in so many of the really good episodes throughout the series, and his character journey is a compelling one. This episode is also the first mention of the National Intelligence Department, or NID, a civilian branch of the US government, and are basically one of the SGC's most prolific antagonists in the franchise. Mayborn reveals that the President and the Joint Chiefs want the Tolans released to the NID. Hammond refuses to release the Tolans to the NID at first unless they pass the quarantine procedures. Hammond really steps up when Mayborn is a little too cheeky for his liking, trying to push the SGC around to do his bidding, and Hammond even pulls the rank card.
We're playing in my ballpark now, and I have the full authority of the President.
So do I, Colonel. Why don't you ask the airman outside to show you to our guest quarters?
That's okay. I'll wait.
That wasn't an invitation. It was an order, Colonel.
When Mayborn leaves the briefing room, O'Neill reveals that Fraser has already given the Tolans a clean bill of health. Hammond's lie about the quarantine has bought them a day to try and prevent releasing the Tolans to the NID. We cut to a scene where Carter is trying to get Nareem to convince Omok to try and accept one of the alternative planets, but he knows that Omok won't budge. There's another moment here of Nareem's flawless riz that I'm just going to skip as well.
Sorry. I only meant technologically. You are anything but primitive, Samantha. What your mind doesn't know, your heart fills in.
Later, as Hammond is forced to discuss the matter with the president on his red phone in his office, DJ questions what the NID wants to get out of the Tollans, and Mayborn shamelessly reveals superior technology and weapons, something Omok will definitely be against. When O'Neill mentions that the Tollans won't cooperate, Mayborn smugly assures them that they will, heavily and obviously implying that they will probably resort to torture to get the info that the NID wants out of them. Hammond reveals that the president has given them an outright order to him to hand the Tollans to NID. I love this line from DJ.
You know, the Pentagon intelligence, that I can understand, but the president? I voted for him.
Mayborn sets the deadline. The Tollans are to be ready for transport by 6 a.m. the next day and leaves the briefing room. Now, I'm sure I mentioned somewhere in the first part that they do utilize DJ's civilian status to avoid a court-martial quite a few times throughout the series, and this is one of those times. Hammond is brought up to the surface to have a little secret meeting with the members of SG-1, and they reveal that if DJ is the one that helps the Tollans escape, then Mayborn and NID can't really do much against it. DJ discusses the escape plan idea to Omok and Nareem, and he explains that there is a planet where they can hopefully get help to reach the new Tollan settlement. Only thing is, DJ is hoping that the Tollans have some kind of technology to communicate to the planet. Omok asks for the planet's coordinates, and DJ manages to convince the older man to let him tag along as they go back to the mountaintop. DJ experiences what it's like to walk through walls, and they make their way quite easily back to the surface, where Omok places a piece of technology on the ground, programs it, and a beam of light, a message, is sent out into space. We cut to Carter doing Carter things in the control room when Nareem enters through the wall and says goodbye. Carter believes that once he's gone, he'll forget about her, so Nareem gives her a technological module and explains that the module acts similar to audio and visual recording devices that we have, only it records feelings. And it's recorded his feelings of Carter in particular. She experiences a little bit of it and is quite moved by it. And she's so rizzed by Nareem that they do end up kissing, though it's slightly awkwardly interrupted by DJ. Sometime later, everyone is informed that the Tollans have disappeared once more from their holding quarters, and there's an off-world activation of the Stargate of an unknown source. When they raise the blast doors in the control room and look in the embarkation room, they see the Tollans, Teal'c, and DJ in there. Colonel Mayborn tries to threaten DJ with a court-martial, but we all know that ain't gonna work. The swoosh happens. And you might notice the side shot of the swoosh is the same one as the one in the pilot and in the future film. Because remember, they didn't have time to film one for the series due to the tight turnaround time. That's a season 2 thing. Mayborn threatens SG-1 that no matter where they send the Tollans, NID will hunt them down. And Carter reveals that they're not sending them anywhere. It's somebody who's come to take them. And out of the gate steps Laia. Mayborn orders the soldiers in the embarkation room to gun the Tollans down if they try to leave. However, ignoring him, Laia invites the Tollans to come with her, and Omok admits that Nareem was right about trusting DJ. Mayborn orders them to stop one last time or get shot, but Laia does some magical Nox technology shiz and starts up the Stargate without the swoosh. And the Tollans disappear, but you hear things go through the Stargate and the soldiers' weapons disappear. Mayborn and Hammond share one last glare at each other, and when the team reconvenes on the ramp, the team reminisces about the quote.
You did good, Daniel.
What of Mayborn?
Oh, he's not a happy camper.
There'll be hell to pay when he gets back to Washington.
What?
Oh, just thinking what the little guy with funny hair once told us.
The very young do not always do as they're told.
And the episode fades to black. And like I said at the start, the episode is a little dry in terms of events. Not too much of a risk is taken during the episodes. Like, none of the main characters were in any fatal danger, unlike in Cor-ai. But the universe building and introduction of some of the most prolific recurring characters and villains in the series, all in a season 1 episode, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Episode 18. Solitudes. You know you're going to have a banger of a time when one of the creators writes the episode. This is also one of the most pivotal episodes of the series, and I don't care if I sound like a broken record, but it's a season 1 episode. Another one of those episodes where there's not really a big bad Goa'uld or alien race as the antagonist of the episode. Solitudes is pretty much a staple subgenre of a Stargate episode by the end of the franchise. And since we've already had 2 episodes that are similar to this subgenre so far, but Solitudes is the first one where the main characters are in fatal danger. I mean, technically, O'Neill in Brief Candle could have died from the nanotech, as an argument could be made that the nanotech could have tricked his body to shutting itself down when it got too old, but I like calling the subgenre of the episodes as a Solitude-like more than a Candle-like. The subgenre, Solitude-like, is when one or more characters of the main cast are stuck in a seemingly impossible situation, most of the time separated from the rest of the main cast as both sides race the clock to try and, respectively, survive or save their friends. The most important detail of the subgenre, no proper antagonist or enemy to go against. Episodes in this subgenre are Solitudes, of course, Tangent, a really good one from Season 4, we'll get around to it, and Grace Under Pressure, a creme de la creme episode from Atlantis Season 2. And it's also important to note that this episode is the first episode of 79 episodes of Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis that's directed by Martin Wood. But let's start the recap. The episode starts strong with an unscheduled off-world activation of the Stargate. They get SG-1's remote access code, which is weird as Hammond mentions that they only just went through the gate on their latest mission. Walter voices his concern through the PA system that the gate is drawing twice the power than normal and increasing, and suddenly DJ is launched out from near the top of the Stargate, and soon after Teal'c is also launched out roughly onto the ramp as the system overloads and the wormhole disengages abruptly. Teal'c seems to be in shock as he reveals that O'Neill and Carter were less than 2 meters behind him. We fade to what looks like an icy cave, and we see O'Neill unconscious on the ground with Carter, who wakes up next to him as she stands up and looks at her dark surroundings before the opening sequence begins. When the opening sequence ends, we're in the medbay. DJ is still unconscious, but he will recover just fine. Hammond asks Teal'c what happened. Teal'c explains that they never saw who attacked the team when they arrived on the planet, but it might have been Goa'uld technology that was being used to shoot at them from far away. Teal'c wants to return to the planet immediately, but Hammond prevents him from throwing his life away. Now, the story goes back and forth between the two groups of characters, O'Neill and Carter in the ice cave, and the rest of SG-1 in the SGC, trying to figure out where the missing two are. But let's go through Teal'c's, DJ's, and Hammond's storyline first. As the overload had destroyed all the electrical connections to power the Stargate, progress is slow on fixing up the connection. The repairs will take at least 24 hours to complete. Now, quick fun facts. The person who plays Sergeant Siler, who tells Hammond that he requires 24 hours at least to complete the repairs, which in itself is a little reference to Star Trek, is Dan Shea, a Canadian actor, stuntman, and stunt coordinator for Stargate and Psych, as well as RDA's stunt double in MacGyver. During that time, DJ finally awakes. He agrees with Teal'c that there's no way that O'Neill and Carter were shot down and captured by the enemies, but the question still remains, where did they end up? 24 hours later, Siler gives the go-ahead to send another probe to the planet, P4A-771, only to once again get the unsavory treatment of several Goa'uld staff weapons shot at the probe and gate from the distance. Seeing the immediate danger, Hammond orders the gate to be disengaged and the rescue mission for O'Neill and Carter to be cancelled. Later, DJ and Siler brainstorm about what would happen to the wormhole during the energy surge that forced the Stargate to disengage abruptly. DJ questions the possibility of the wormhole discharging the extra energy during the surge to a different Stargate. I'll let Siler explain in more detail.
Yeah, maybe. Sir, it's all theoretical. We think that Stargates are basically giant superconductors. Charged matter streams along lines of force between them.
Positive to negative, like electricity, right?
Except for the fact that the whole trip happens outside our dimension. Yeah, more or less.
Okay, what if it jumped? Redirected itself here, or anywhere along here.
You're suggesting we search all these worlds?
Well, at least we've narrowed an entire galaxy of Stargates down to a handful of possibilities.
DJ theorizes that O'Neill and Carter might have been thrown out of a gate along the way from P4A-771 to Earth. They had managed to narrow down millions of gates in the galaxy to a couple of handfuls. Time passes and they search through a number of the possible gates, but they still can't find O'Neill or Carter until Hammond is forced to call the search effort off. So let's now go to O'Neill's and Carter's storyline. Almost 2 hours after Carter woke up in the ice cave, O'Neill also regains his consciousness. We find out that his leg was broken from being launched out of the Stargate. O'Neill asks for a debrief of what's happened, and Carter explains that they've been separated from Teal'c and DJ. Carter notes that she can see some light at some of the fissures around the cave, which means they aren't buried too deeply, but mentions that the fissures are too narrow to follow very far to the end. First things first, though, Carter has to set the break in O'Neill's leg and splint it, though she struggles as she is.
Just take it easy, Doctor.
Wrong kind of doctor, I'm afraid.
You wouldn't think jagged bone digging into raw nerves would hurt, but it does.
We get some quick character building lines from O'Neill, revealing he suffered through at least 9 broken bones if you count skull fractures, and to try to distract him from her tying up the splint, she gets him to talk about the time that he got the skull fractures and how he managed to survive a little parachuting mishap over the borders of Iran and Iraq. He mentioned that there was no rescue planned as it was not an official mission and that he had to make it through himself. The thought of returning back to Sarah kept him going. Moving on, O'Neill asks Carter how much supplies they have left. Carter reveals that they have survival supplies for 3 days, but that can be stretched. Though initially Carter can't find the DHD, she finds it frozen in a block of ice and they start to slowly chisel it out of the ice, though O'Neill then reveals that he might have a broken rib as well as his leg. As they continue working on unicing the DHD, Carter reveals her theory on what might have caused the Stargate to malfunction, which is exactly what DJ thought of in his storyline, showcasing how brilliant these characters are and how exposure to each of their specialties have influenced their ways of thinking, especially when it comes to problem solving with the Stargate. Oh, and they also discover at least one dead Serpent guard in their quest to recover the DHD, so that's fun. Later, when the DHD is finally uncovered, Carter attempts to dial Earth, but it doesn't seem like enough energy is converted into the Stargate and it winds itself down. Even though O'Neill's injuries are getting worse, as he's now coughing up some blood, he orders her to rest as they have yet slept at all since finding themselves in the ice cave. The next day, Carter is even more frustrated at the fact that the DHD won't work, and O'Neill, whose condition has gotten way worse, orders her to take the rest of the supplies and climb out of the ice cave to the surface, as he believes she'll have more of a chance of survival if she leaves him. Carter attempts one last time to dial Earth after doing the all reliable turning it off and on again method. This time, the attempt causes quite a bit of an earthquake that threatens to bring the whole cave down. But see, the key part of that last sentence was earthquake. As back at the SGC after being told by Hammond that they have to call off the rescue attempts, DJ notices the water in the conference room shaking. He looks into the embarkation room and sees that the gate's chevrons are lit up like an off-world activation is going to happen, but no wormhole is created. DJ realizes what information he's been missing this whole time. DJ and Tilk find Hammond and DJ explains his theory to the general. What if there's a second Stargate on Earth? As the Goa'uld didn't create the Stargate, right? And the one that Ra brought with him might not have been the first on Earth. Trying to figure out where on Earth O'Neill and Carter could be, DJ mentions that when they used to start the Stargate, it would cause the whole complex to shake, a la Stargate the feature film and the first few episodes of the season. Hammond explains that the complex doesn't shake anymore as they've installed frequency dampeners that limit the shaking to a vibration. This gives DJ the idea to search for any sudden and short earthquakes for both when the gate originally malfunctioned and when Carter did her final attempt to dial Earth. He likens the problem to be like when you dial your own phone number and get a busy signal. Walter gets the search results and 2 earthquakes occurred at the exact same times to the second, only about 15 miles out of McMurdo Station in Antarctica. Hammond, Tilk and DJ race to go save O'Neill and Carter. As her final Hail Mary attempt didn't work out, Carter is forced to leave O'Neill, who is barely conscious at this point. She leaves him with a walkie-talkie and starts to climb her way out. Her progress is slow, but she finally makes her way out of the cave and onto the surface. However, she is surrounded by desolate ice when she looks around. Giving up, she goes back down so that O'Neill isn't left all alone and falls unconscious. She only regains her consciousness to see that SGC members have managed to find them in time and that she and O'Neill will be fine. And the episode ends with a beautiful shot of the Antarctica gate standing there. What did I say about a banger episode? Also, massive reveals for the universe building. The thing that bothers me though, apparently TV guides of the time accidentally revealed the twist that O'Neill and Carter were somewhere else on Earth. They literally had one job. 9 out of 10. What else can I say? Episode 19. Tin Man. Come try ya! This is a fun episode, and the second closest thing to a filler episode, but unlike Emancipation, it's a good filler episode. And once again, unlike Emancipation, characters introduced in this episode will at least return in a future episode. Even the plot section in this episode's Wikia page is only 4 paragraphs long, but this video is a maybe not slightly in-depth recap, so it'll have my trademark rambling for a bit. The episode starts with SG-1 arriving on P3X-989, or at least some sort of warehouse on P3X-989. We later find out this is the planet Altair, so I'll call the planet Altair from now on. They are quickly knocked unconscious by a white light as they're exploring, and the opening credits begin. After the opening sequence, the team wake up somewhere else in new clothing and missing their equipment, and they meet a strange man named Harlan who greets them with,
Come try ya!
Jay Brazow, who plays Harlan, provides the character with a very infectious innocence and childlike earnestness that makes the character lovable enough for the audience to care. Harlan greets them and explains that they are now better. He explains that he is the last survivor of Altair and caretaker of the complex that they currently find themselves in. Through the dialogue, we get to find out more of what's happened to the planet. Radiation has caused life on the surface to be impossible, and that the Altairans were forced to live underground long before the events of the episode. Hubble, the Altairan who came up with the concept of the underground complexes, seemed to have died too early, leaving too many secrets with him. And then this happens.
How long? Exactly.
Exactly 99,207,000 of your hours.
Well, that's 11,000 years.
How did you know that?
That's right.
Wait, how did you know that?
See? Everything is better. Even your minds. You are all much, much better.
This is part of what Harlan meant when he said that SG-1 is now much, much better. When Harlan struggles to explain what he meant when he said he made SG-1 better, O'Neill orders SG-1 to leave Altair. Harlan attempts to stop them from leaving as it is unsafe. However, once again, he struggles to find the words to clearly explain what the problem is. Though as they leave, he does call out that they will be back. Back at the SGC, during their usual post-mission checkup, Fraser reveals to O'Neill that all of SG-1 that came back now have no heartbeat. When she attempts to get a blood sample, a milky white liquid comes out instead, and as everyone starts to panic, Teal'c realizes that he no longer possesses a Goa'uld and no longer has a stomach pouch. O'Neill grabs a scalpel and cuts open his forearm to reveal machinations underneath their skin. Turns out, when Harlan made them better, he turned them into androids. Of course, SG-1, the androids who believe that they're SG-1, are placed under guard in the holding room. In the holding room, SG-1 discuss their new situation as androids, though Teal'c is visibly perturbed about something. When DJ asks if Teal'c is okay, the latter reveals that even though the Goa'uld larva is gone, he can still feel its presence, and DJ likens it to continuing to feel a limb after losing it. Hammond, with a platoon of guards, entered the holding room and tells SG-1 that he plans on sending SG-5 to Altair to see what happened, though SG-1 warns against doing so and tells Hammond of Harlan. As O'Neill is about to ask for permission to return to Altair, all members of SG-1 start to experience some sort of dizziness and collapse. This is a cool shot of them returning to Altair, but you can tell that the stunt double for O'Neill is most likely good old Dan Shea, the stunt coordinator. As soon as they arrive on Altair, they feel better, and Harlan welcomes them warmly again. He reveals that their consciousness are permanently transferred into the synthetic and they can't return back to their original biological bodies. Harlan returns them to the room that they found themselves in earlier and informs them that they should rest as their internal systems have not yet fully recharged, further cementing that their android bodies are inescapable. O'Neill seems to be the only one of the group struggling to move on from being angry at the thought of now being a robot. He goes to find Harlan just to talk, apparently. While Carter and DJ discuss the possibilities of being an android, like the fact that they don't require food or drink anymore, Teal'c suddenly leaves them. The two leftover androids look at each other and decide to follow Teal'c. However, they soon lose him, but we see the Jafar suddenly having a seizure. Cut to O'Neill with Harlan, as O'Neill is trying to figure out what Harlan did to their original bodies, while Harlan is trying to fix a coolant problem. DJ and Carter arrive and ask if anybody has seen Teal'c. After O'Neill berates him and questions him, Harlan finally reveals that the underground complex project began with the hopes of allowing some Altairans to survive. Originally, 1,000 were supposed to live there. However, the transferring technology had not been perfected yet, and some were lost during the process. Others were then lost over the years due to workplace incidents. Some left through the Stargate to explore while carrying batteries, and some they just ended their lives, not able to accept the change to Android, until Harlan was all that's left. An alarm sounds and Harlan gets O'Neill, Carter and DJ to help out with fixing the problem. He tells them that they have to vent the thermal capacitor. Turns out, part of the reason why he created Android SG-1 is because there are some problems in the underground complex that cannot be fixed by just him. Harlan will coordinate the others by the main computer, while SG-1 will go to the different areas to unblock the rusted vents manually. DJ and Carter manage to unblock their vent in time, but Harlan is forced to start the venting process before O'Neill is able to unblock his vent. Teal'c approaches O'Neill and starts to attack him. The resulting fight ends with O'Neill being thrown into some piping which inadvertently results in the sufficient venting of the pressure. This does mean that piping hot thermal heat is being blown out of the broken pipe though, and Teal'c uses that heat to burn the synthetic skin on O'Neill's cheek off and knock him out. Before Teal'c could kill O'Neill, everyone is able to arrive at the location and Harlan destroys Teal'c. Harlan cryptically then promises that Teal'c will be okay and runs away. Carter and DJ chase after him and find him in a secret location of the underground complex and find that Harlan is in the process of making a new Teal'c synthetic. Harlan reveals casually that Teal'c malfunctioned due to the consciousness of the Goa'uld lava taking over Teal'c's mind. Carter questions how Harlan could make a new synthetic android of Teal'c without the original body, and O'Neill finally forces Harlan to reveal the truth. The reason why he cannot return their consciousness back into their physical bodies is because the consciousness that is in the synthetic android bodies are duplicates, and that the biological SG-1 are still alive and unconscious. Harlan reveals that as soon as the androids had accepted their transference, he would have returned SG-1 back to Earth through the Stargate. Due to this interaction...
Harlan, where have you been?
Extremely busy.
I can see that. Doing what?
Oh, creating your synthetic others, saving the planet. Busy.
It seems that sometime after the white light knocked them out, Harlan had met the biological SG-1 and introduced himself. Though, since they were restrained, they didn't know that he had created synthetic versions of themselves, and Teal'c is visibly disappointed at the reveal that Harlan had to disintegrate synthetic Teal'c. After some time trying to get their heads around their respective situation, biological O'Neill talks with synthetic O'Neill. Synthetic O'Neill seems to be struggling the most with his identity crisis. However, he does manage to get his head around it, and due to the security risk, Synth O'Neill promises to bury the Alteran gate. And the episode ends with the biological SG-1 team members leaving. Like I said, it's a fun little filler episode, but with much more likable characters than Emancipation. I give this episode an 8 out of 10, simply because it's fun. Episode 20. There But For the Grace of God. What's the highest rating I've given for a Season 1 episode so far? 9 out of 10 for a few of them? Okay, let's see how this one goes. The episode starts off with SG-1 arriving at an alien complex through the Stargate. The complex looks almost like a warehouse, and from the small glimpses of the items we see around the place, it looks like it houses several different alien artifacts. This time around, DJ is recording what they discover at the location. As he's cataloguing the different artifacts on video, Teal'c notes that there seems to be damage made by Goa'uld weaponry, though it doesn't look like it happened recently. They've arrived at an alien complex abandoned by the Goa'uld. None of the writing and symbols around seem to show any indication that the race that used to live there came from an ancient people group from Earth, like many of their previous missions had uncovered. DJ and Carter are then ordered to explore a different section of the location, while O'Neill and Teal'c continue exploring their current surrounding. O'Neill finds a sculpture or marking that kind of looks like a screaming face, and Teal'c warns O'Neill that they have to return to Earth as soon as possible, as the marking is the symbol of Koroshni, which loosely translates to turn back to any Goa'uld or Jafar. Teal'c explains that the symbol of Koroshni are placed on worlds that the Goa'uld have wiped out or left contaminated, and that the planet's entire surface is most likely radioactive. Back to DJ and Carter. DJ recognizes the new area they're in now is some sort of lab, noting that the alien race must have visited other planets in the gate system, as he recognizes several items in there as having similar markings that indicate ancient human cultures. Due to the danger of some radioactive leaking possible, O'Neill orders SG-1 to prepare to leave the location. DJ decides to make the most of the situation and fills his pack with artifacts in the lab before he finds one that seems more alien than anything else. This alien artifact, let's call it the remote, seems to activate another artifact nearby that acts like some sort of mirror or gateway, and I'm just spitballing names here, but maybe a good name for this mirror gateway thing could be the quantum mirror? You see, the joke here is that the official name of this thing is the quantum mirror. On the quantum mirror, DJ can see the lab reflected. However, he's not reflected. Immersed by the strangeness of the mirror, DJ reaches out and touches it. We see a flash and a light flow through the mirror and DJ's body. Running back out to the main area to try and get help with taking the mirror back to the SGC, DJ finds the area abandoned and empty and assumes that O'Neill had ditched him, so he dials back to Earth. The way DJ reacts to being left behind is really funny and implies that it's happened happened before, but the foreboding music does undercut the comical nature of the line and does keep the viewer tense. When DJ arrives back on Earth, he is held at gunpoint by Air Force soldiers, and a Colonel Hammond enters the embarkation room, asking who the hell he is and how he got the SG-1 code before the opening credits begin. After the opening sequence, DJ gets drugged and put under a variety of tests. We don't really get to see the results of these tests, but it's most likely the tests to confirm that he ain't a Goa'uld or under any sort of influence that they can see. In the holding cells, Catherine talks to DJ, though she acts like she doesn't really know the dude, and in fact, it seems like the last time she talked to him about the possibility of joining the Stargate program during the events of the feature film, DJ was quite rude to her. Now, this whole episode is about DJ trying to convince the characters we thought we knew and love that he is part of the SGC, and having to deal with a number of slight differences between the universe he knows and the universe he's now trapped in. These differences include Carter is no longer a captain in the Air Force, but is a civilian doctor. Other Neil's and Hammond's positions are reversed. Hammond is now only a colonel, while Other Neil is the general of the complex. Catherine should be retired, but since the torment of Tantalus never happened, they never realized Ernest was still alive in this universe. Speaking of events not happening, obviously episodes like Children of the Gods, The Nox, and Thor's Hammer never happen. So they never meet and ally with Teal'c, and they never meet races like the Nox and the Asgards, which has given them hope that defeating the Goa'uld is possible. And in fact, in this universe, the invasion of the Goa'uld has started to the point that major cities all around the world have been destroyed, like a significant portion of the UK has been destroyed, and Washington and Philadelphia. Later in the briefing room, as DJ relates to Catherine how he found himself in his current situation, he notices the soldiers preparing a bomb to be sent to Chulak, seemingly moments after DJ told them the gate address to the planet. Here we find out about the Genesis list and the beta site, things that will become staple to the series whenever the Earth is about to face certain doom, which coincidentally seem to always align to a lot of the season cliffhangers. Go figure. I'll let Catherine explain these concepts.
We're evacuating everyone we can to another planet. World leaders, scientists, doctors.
Shocked by the callousness that Other Neil exhibits about the possible innocent human lives in Goa'uld planets, remember, his experiences with DJ in the feature film never happened, so sending and or preparing atomic bombs to detonate has become desensitized to him as a good soldier. DJ starts to brainstorm with Carter and Catherine in the control room. Catherine theorizes that the moment that DJ touched the quantum mirror, he somehow was transported to this alternate reality. Seeing as there's nothing left for him to do now, DJ decides to take a look at what information the government has of this universe's Daniel Jackson, finding out that his counterpart was last seen in Egypt in 1997. He then takes another look at the map of the world and realizes that his counterpart in this reality is most likely dead due to the Goa'uld attacks. The control room suddenly gets into a panic as the plane that had the members of the Genesis list had been shot down by a Goa'uld ship, and a Goa'uld Hathor vessel lands on top of Mount Cheyenne complex, kind of like what they do on the pyramids and such. Now, this episode is also the first time that we learn that there is a 38-minute window that a Stargate can remain open without extraordinary circumstances, and that the dialing computer program in the SGC dials the gate a lot slower than if you were to enter the address using a DHD. So, our human characters find themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place. The Goa'uld have activated the gate from off-world, meaning that only things and people can come onto Earth, and the ship landing on top of Mount Cheyenne prevents our characters from escaping through the surface. So what do? Other Neil and the Air Force plan a valiant attempt at fighting off the forces from the ship, while Catherine and Carter lets DJ hear an audio file that was transmitted from around where P3R233, the warehouse that they visited at the start of the episode, is located, and DJ quickly translates it as a warning message. Beware the destroyers. They come from 3, 32, 16, 8, 10, and 12. Now, the numbers were not said in the audio recording, but were a series of pulses and beats that were divided into 6 groups. And DJ realizes that the 6 numbers were code for a Stargate address without the origin point. And since DJ recorded the alien gate, they can try and figure out what the gate address of where the destroyers, the Goa'uld, came from. The invasion of the complex starts, and we see that Teal'c is the one leading the Jafar. Studying the video, they extrapolate what the numbers might mean, and DJ attempts to get everyone to agree to letting him travel back to P3R233 to go back to his reality through the quantum mirror to prevent the attack in his reality. Other Neil after hearing DJ's impassioned plead and seeing actual footage of our Neil and prime versions of the rest of SG-1, seem to have a change of heart slightly. Since there's still a problem of the dialing computer being way slower than a DHD, DJ comes up with a plan to try and bring some time by attempting to appeal to Teal'c's better half, and I'm not talking about Junior. Oh, and this is the first time that the show confirms that if they weren't both in the military, O'Neill and Carter definitely gets together. They're the OTP, if you would, of SG-1. I didn't mention this in the earlier differences list, because this is such a huge fan service moment. Other Neil, armed with DJ's video camera, try to chat with Teal'c and show him the possibility of freeing the Jafar and his family from Goa'uld oppression. However, because of Other Neil's desensitized earlier actions, bombing Chulak, Other Neil fails in getting Teal'c to help and is executed by Teal'c. More characters die, trying to give Catherine and DJ enough time to dial P3R233, including Carter, and luckily, they managed to, with DJ only getting his arm shot by Teal'c's staff, and then the auto-destruct sequence in the complex go off, killing evil Teal'c and the rest of the Jafar. Cradling his hurt arm, DJ finds the quantum mirror and touches it, returning to the Prime universe, where SG-1 and some other SG soldiers are searching for DJ, as real time has been passing for both universes, and at this point, DJ has been missing for at least a few hours. They find DJ with the gate address and a warning that they're coming. Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes ever, on TV ever, in creation ever. An easy 9.5 out of 10 for me. Episode 21, Politics. Now, I've mentioned a few times that the production cycle of Season 1 of Stargate SG-1 was quite impressively short, and to fulfill the contractual obligations that MGM had with Showtime, they've had to resort to doing quite a few time-cutting shortcuts to ensure that they delivered a show at the contractually obligated timeline. Now, this includes reusing CG assets from the feature film, like the swoosh, having quite a few episodes that kind of be classified as bottle episodes, such as The Torment of Tantalus or Cor-ai, or Solitudes, as well as just phoning in an under-workshopped episode like Emancipation. But what's one time-saving trope of an episode that they haven't done yet until now? That's right, a clip show. Now, if you're a total newbie when it comes to TV show jargon, a clip show is an episode that consists mainly of fragments or excerpts or clips of previous episodes, sometimes with voiceover added, although looking at tvtropes.org, I believe that Politics is more than just a clip show episode, but can be considered as a recap episode, as it's used to sum up Season's 1 storyline up to that point. And in particular, the SGC's struggle to justify its continued running in the eyes of those dastardly politicians. Now, as boring of a title as Politics is, it does capture the true essence of this first episode of a 3-parter. That's right, they dared to make a 3-part story as part of the Season 1 cliffhanger and Season 2 premiere. The joys and freedom of knowing that there's going to be a second season coming. Knowing that there was a more than likely chance that most viewers have only seen a few episodes of the season, and appreciating the almost carefreeness of its episodical side of storytelling, and knowing that there is a certain level of stakes building when you reveal that there has been a serialized storyline that seems to be heading to some sort of climax, the creators of SG-1 perfectly positioned this clip show episode to whet the appetite of the week-to-week fans, as well as allow for the casual viewers to make connections that they may not have gotten during their casual viewings of odd episodes during the season. Now, due to the nature of the clip show episode, I won't focus on the exact clips that were used, but simply recap the overarching narrative that is used to explain the clips that appear in the episode. Now, the episode starts off directly after the end of the previous episode, where even as he's being bandaged in the medbay of the SGC, DJ is already trying to convince the rest of SG-1 that what he experienced in the alternate universe was real. However, just as Carter is about to go into her spiel about Einstein's theory of alternate realities or something, Hammond and Smarmy Samuels comes in and interrupts. Samuels reveals that there's going to be some sort of hearing that's going to be happening to figure out whether or not the SGC should continue, as it's been about a year after the events of Children of the Gods, which means that the Stargate has been around for about 2 years since the events of the feature film. This is also the first appearance of Ronnie Cox, who plays the incredibly cunning Senator Robert Kinsey, who seems to be heading this hearing. And part of the reason why this hearing has to happen, because the Stargate project in universe is an unofficial project that just happens to cost $7.4 billion a year to operate. Yeah, Kinsey has Doge vibes whole decades before Doge was even a thing. And I can't help but also project that Kinsey's line here is a certain dig about a certain someone that I'm sure all of us know.
Let me first say that though illness robbed me of the chance ever to serve in this country's military, I have the greatest respect for those who do. Especially those who have made service of country their life's work.
Sitting down at the briefing room, Kinsey holds back no punches, and we definitely see, it's not subtle or implied at all, that our favourite characters are not going to have an easy time to try and convince Kinsey that running the Stargate program is crucial to keeping Earth safe. In fact, he has the exact same vibes as Hathor in Cor-ai, where you know nothing is going to work. By the end of the episode, you get the real sense that Kinsey wants to shut down the SGC as a power move to get his ass elected as president, and Smarmy Samuels is happy to oblige his every whim. This motivation is shown clearly in this line that Kinsey gives, followed by a great snarky joke by DJ that is a clear reference to Roland Emmerich's movie Independence Day.
Senator, we have reason to believe that the Goa'uld are about to launch an attack in force in ships.
Then I think they'll regret taking on the United States military.
Oh, you're right. We'll just upload a computer virus into the mothership.
I imagine this will be extremely frustrating to listen to for DJ, as he had experienced a similar attitude with other Neil in the alternate universe. This reckless cockiness that Kinsey showcases continues to pop up through the episode, making several claims like,
So even with your team unarmed, at the enemy's mercy, in the palm of their hand, as it were, one of their own was able to set you free.
Kowalski made light work of what you referred to in your report as a death glider. Yet you managed to get away with minimal casualties. Hardly the greatest threat humanity has ever faced.
The Goa'uld have enslaved a galaxy of worlds.
I don't care about other worlds. I must place the citizens of this country first.
We have challenged Apophis. He will not rest until the people of this world worship him as their god.
There is only one God, sir, and I do not believe for one moment that he will allow what you're trying to tell me to come to pass. We are, after all, one nation under God.
Kinsey will definitely fit in the current Republican Party. I mean, no, stupid. You said you wouldn't go all political. Oh, and the offense that Kinsey shows when Teal'c talks about how Apophis wants to be worshipped as a god just shouts American fundamentalist Christianism. A lot of hollow bravado to cover up the shallow claim to power that Kinsey is obviously attempting at this point. The episode ends with the inevitable countdown that the SGC is going to shut itself down. They're unable to even dial out to let Teal'c leave and continue his fight somehow, as it's a massive security risk. The final shot of the members of SG-1 looking down at the gate from the briefing room, unable to do anything, hits so hard. Which is why I find it so interesting that a lot of the fandom rated this episode so lowly. It's considered as one of the show's weakest episodes, but I don't totally agree. Though the length of the clips used in the episode can be considered almost egregious sometimes, like a lot of them go for a lot longer than you would expect considering they're called clips, they can be justified as the characters in the briefing room going through the whole report of the episode that is being clipped. The episode also ties up a lot of the throwaway lines that only gave glimpses of the background tension between different parties of the US government in previous episodes and brought it to the forefront, which is so awesome for me as someone who wants to be a storyteller. I believe that even though politics is very much a product of its time, where story stretching and budget stretching required the clip show to be present, I think they did it in an almost countercultural way, and I would even say it diverted expectations by having it as an integral pushing off point for an epic season cliffhanger. The scenes out of the clips are full of tension and gripping political storytelling, and I believe it was able to transform the episodical nature of some of the episodes shown in the clips and turn them into something with serialized importance. Though not perfect, I still and will always watch politics as part of my rewatch of SG-1. Not the same can be said of Emancipation though. I'll give politics a 7 out of 10. Episode 22. Within the Serpent's Grasp. Whew. We finally reached the end of this long, amazing ride of a first season. Though not perfect, it's probably the best first season of a TV show I've ever watched, especially from that era of TV. Of course, nowadays with streaming services, larger budgets, and a general decrease in episode counts leading to less filler, TV show quality in their first seasons are generally a lot better than it was. That's why what SG-1 managed to pull off in 1997 and 1998 is so amazing. Let's get into one of the best stakes builder finales I've ever watched. Part 2 of the three-parter starts sometime after Kinsey had declared that the Stargate program will be shut down immediately. O'Neill enters Hammond's office as the latter has to start shredding classified documents, and they talk about the reality that the Stargate program is being shut down. O'Neill still hasn't given up, and Hammond reveals that he's exhausted every avenue he can think of to reverse Kinsey's decision. However, no one is willing to go against Kinsey and the Senate committee. In the embarkation room, SG-1 waits for O'Neill. DJ still hasn't given up in going to the gate address that he got in the alternate reality. Carter and O'Neill, being the only Air Force soldiers of the group, grapple with the possibility that they will be court-martialed for going against orders when they return, though there's the more than likely chance that they might not return. Remember, in-universe, these characters don't know that they have plot armor, so Teal'c and DJ's reasoning finally gets O'Neill to change his mind and go for an unsanctioned, unauthorized medical attack.
I believe a medical attack could be successful.
Surgical attack, Teal'c. It's called a surgical attack, and I'd feel like an idiot.
Sir?
I was answering Daniel's question. If we don't do something now and they do attack later, I'd feel like an idiot.
We hard cut to the Stargate being dialed, and the rest of the SGC are locked out and away from the embarkation room and control rooms. SG-1 sends a MALP in, and the footage that is shown shows a dark area on the other side with signs of Goa'uld infrastructure. Before Hammond and the other soldiers could reach them, SG-1 runs through the gate and the opening credits start. After the credits, on the other side, DJ dials back to Earth to return the MALP, which does provide more light for the dark place that they've arrived in, while the gate is on. Teal'c explains that they're surrounded by transport containers, and when Teal'c opens one, it's filled with Goa'uld weaponry. This is the first episode that the Zatan Katel? How do you say some of these words? This is the first episode that the Zatan Katel appears in, and since the name has 2 apostrophes, and Goa'ulds love their apostrophes, which makes writing this script a bit harder for me, I'll call them Zats from now on. Teal'c explains that the Zats use a different form of energy, and the effect that the series uses looks like some sort of lightning compared to the effects for the staff weapons. Teal'c explains the Zats' 2-shot rule. The first shot is much like a taser, disabling the victim. The second shot will kill most beings. And much like the show, I'll only talk about the Zats' 3rd shot effect when it appears, and then pretend it never happened. Suddenly, some whining noise starts to build up, and then a force blows through the group, throwing the human members of SG-1 back. Teal'c is unsure of what happened, but does tell them that they must dial home immediately. However, when DJ attempts to, the gate refuses to connect. A group of Serpent guards then start to approach the area, and SG-1 hides just in time, though they're stuck in awkward positions as the soldiers enter the room that they're stuck in. DJ notices a pair of night vision goggles that was left on the ground, while O'Neill is stuck behind the DHD, which doesn't give him much room to hide. Luckily though, it seems that the Serpent guards' helmets don't allow for much peripheral vision. Some sort of orb comes out of one of the transport containers and floats to the middle of the Stargate and stays there. The Serpent guards then leave the room. Now, I'm not saying it was a case of plagiarism or anything, but I find it so interesting that Doctor Who also featured a floating orb in front of a golden patterned wall. I don't know. Seeing this shot of the orb in SG-1 just reminded me of a similar shot in Doctor Who Series 2's Army of Ghosts. Anyway, Teal'c explains to the team that the orb is a Goa'uld long-range visual communication device and likens it to television. And luckily for you, the version that's on the Region 4 DVD that my family owns is the original Showtime version, because O'Neill says this wonderful meta one-liner.
Think you get Showtime?
In other words, the line is changed to O'Neill saying, Goa'uld TV, which is a reference to The Simpsons, which RDA in real life is a big fan of. Since Teal'c saw what the Serpent Guard did to open the door when they left, Teal'c and the team is able to leave as they start to make their way through the complex. Back in the SGC, Walter confirms with Hammond that the ones who stepped through the Stargate was in fact SG-1, and that they had travelled to the address that DJ got from the alternate universe. Ferretti, who's now leader of SG-2, wants to back them up, though Hammond is originally reluctant. He orders Ferretti and SG-2 to go and bring SG-1 back officially for court-martial. However, the Stargate refuses to connect to the address. We return to SG-1 as their exploration of the complex brings them to a room with a sarcophagus that's currently being used. In the room, there is a viewpoint that leaves Teal'c speechless for a bit. Teal'c then reveals that they hadn't in fact travelled to a planet, but are in fact aboard a Goa'uld transport vessel, and that vessel is currently in hyperspace. That's what that force that knocked the SG-1 team members earlier was. Another nice touch of the rest of the universe continuing to evolve independently without the main characters, like the personal shield technology that was shown in the Nox that Teal'c had no idea about. The reason why Teal'c was initially unsure that they were on a spaceship was because he had never boarded a vessel like the one that they're on now. Teal'c's comment about most vessels not containing Stargates show that since their rough introduction with humans from Earth, the Goa'uld might have had to modify their way of thinking, mostly in terms of military tactics, which is a nice touch of universe building as well. A lone Jafar managed to catch O'Neill almost literally with his pants down, but O'Neill is able to distract him for Carter to shoot the Zat twice at the Jafar soldier, killing the man. Teal'c steps forward and shoots the Zat a third time, and the Jafar soldier disintegrates. Okay, now that we're finally here, that's right, the Zat is so OP that all it takes is 3 shots in quick succession and all traces of your existence will disappear. I'm not sure what the writers and creators were smoking when they made that decision, but it's there. Thankfully though, this is only one of a few times that they show the disintegration power of the Zats, as the creators do realize themselves that the 3-shot rule is so stupid that they kind of forget and or ignore that this moment ever happens. And they even lampshade it a little in future episodes like Wormhole Extreme, which is a hilariously good episode. Can't wait to get to talk about it fully. And simply, characters on the show just get shown shooting people twice with the Zats from this point on. Carter works out that there was some sort of force field around the ship and realizes that the only reason why they were able to dial to the ship earlier was because it was in orbit of a planet. And when the ship went into hyperspace, obviously the address was invalidated due to how the gate addresses work. Remember DJ's explanation seen in the feature film? And the fact that they're traveling faster than light speed in hyperspace also doesn't help the fact. While they're trying to figure out if it's feasible to take over the vessel to turn around, Teal'c reveals that he's only qualified to pilot a death glider and not one of these new classes of Goa'uld vessel. Teal'c tells them that they should probably relocate as the sarcophagus chamber is rarely left unguarded for long. As they continue to explore the ship, they manage to find the hangar bay section of the vessel and witness a lot of death gliders being prepared for war. They realize that the vessel is an attack ship headed to Earth, with no way to get back to the SGC to warn them of the danger. Carter asks Teal'c how fast the ship they're on could go, and since Teal'c is not sure of the capabilities of the ship, he guesses that it's probably as fast as a Hathor vessel, and Hathor vessels can only travel at 10 times the speed of light, which gives Carter hope, as based on the distance of the planet of the gate address they travel to, she surmises that it should take at least a year or so to get to Earth, even if they're going at 10 times the speed of light. Hearing some sort of announcement in the Goa'uld vessel's PA system, they sneak their way back to the chamber that they arrived in, and see that many Jafar and Goa'uld slaves are now there. Even the sarcophagus had been relocated into that chamber as well. The sphere then changes to an almost transparent orb, and Apophis appears and gives them a rousing pep talk before announcing that he will be with them soon, and that until then, they should obey his son's orders. The sarcophagus opens, and Apophis's son, Cor-ai, controlling Skara's body, stands up in front of everyone, shocking SG-1, especially O'Neill. When asked what the plan is moving forward, O'Neill wants to capture Cor-ai. Not sure that it's the best tactical plan, Carter also asks what the contingency plan would be.
Okay, but with respect, sir, I think you're making an emotional decision here.
Maybe. But it's also the best strategic decision.
Is it?
Jack has a point. If we can capture him, maybe we can get through to the old Skara. Kendra said that she could fight past her Goa'uld when it was still inside of her.
Let's go.
Sir, contingency plan.
C4.
As nobody knows that SG-1 is on the ship currently, Cor-ai isn't as heavily guarded as he would be normally, and O'Neill and Teal'c use this chance to capture Cor-ai while DJ and Carter sneak back to the hangar bay and plant a few C4s on the death gliders in the hopes of starting a chain explosion later if needed. A quick gunfight on the bridge chamber later, Teal'c and O'Neill are able to take care of Cor-ai's guards and lock themselves on the bridge. O'Neill then attempts to get the Goa'uld to let Skara talk to him. However, Cor-ai's just a little shit, so O'Neill shoots Cor-ai with a Zat, and the shock is enough to allow Skara to surface and talk to O'Neill. Skara begs for forgiveness because of...
Wanir! Wanir, are you still my friend?
Yes, I am.
Can you forgive me for what we're about to do?
Scar, what are you about to do?
Please forgive us.
However, before any more plan details are revealed, Cor-ai regains control of Skara's body and the Jafar soldiers manage to blast their way onto the ship. They're stuck in the Mexican standoff. Teal'c threatening Clorel's life while the Jafar threaten O'Neill's. Teal'c is forced to let Clorel go, and they capture both O'Neill and Teal'c. We cut to DJ and Carter as they're planting C4 on the gate. As we've seen before in Singularity, Naquadah is kind of bombastic. The two manage to hide when the door to the chamber opens and Clorel enters with a bunch of Serpent guards and Teal'c and O'Neill. They contact Apophis using the sphere, who is surprised but proud at Clorel's achievement. Clorel asks Apophis if he wants the prisoners to stay alive until they reconvene with each other, but Apophis orders Teal'c's larva to be extracted out of him so that he dies slowly while O'Neill watches. Apophis hangs up, and instead of doing what his father said straight away, Clorel decides to take O'Neill and Teal'c back to the bridge. We get a few shots of discomfort on Clorel's face, as Skara is now obviously fighting back harder than normal and influencing the Goa'uld's choices. When they leave, Carter puts on a timer for the C4. If she doesn't turn the timer off within 24 hours, the explosives will detonate automatically. Back on the bridge, Clorel orders a Jafar to take the ship out of hyperspace, and after collapsing again due to the sudden slowness, O'Neill stands up and is shocked when he sees that the ship has arrived in our solar system as it's passing Saturn. Obviously, these new vessels can travel way faster than 10 times the speed of light. Clorel reveals that O'Neill will witness the destruction of Earth before he will be killed himself. Back on Earth, Walter informs Hammond that the Cairn Deep Space Radar, a fictional radar that's part of the NASA Deep Space Network in the show's universe, has identified 2 large blips passing Saturn and heading to Earth. Hammond starts preparing everyone for the impending attack. Back on the Goa'uld ship, Carter and DJ finally made their way back to the bridge and start a rescue attempt. They manage to take care of the soldiers, however, Clorel is able to capture DJ and start to use the hand device on his brother-in-law. Oh yeah, at some point during politics, they reminded the viewers that technically Skara and Sharae are siblings, which is another connection with the feature film. I just couldn't really find the space to mention that reference in the previous episode's recap. O'Neill is then forced to make the difficult decision to shoot at Skara before DJ is killed. Due to the bullets, Clorel's hold over Skara is gone, and Skara speaks to O'Neill one last time, with the latter apologizing to the young man. With DJ still reeling from the near-death experience from Clorel's hand device, and O'Neill unable to fully mourn Skara's death, Teal'c gets the whole team to look out at the view of the Goa'uld ship as Earth is approaching quickly. In an awesome final shot, the camera pulls back away from the bridge, away from the ship, and we see in the distance another ship as big as the one they're currently on before a fade to black. See what I mean? What an amazing way to end a solid episode. The pacing is well done. The lore dump is not egregious. We get a return of Skara, which brings more emotional stakes for our main characters, especially O'Neill. And what a massive cliffhanger to end on. Earth is way unprepared to take on one of these new Fandangle ships, let alone 2 of them. The fact that both Goa'uld attack ships will most likely have dozens and upon dozens of death gliders is also very concerning, considering we've seen their technology and tactics evolve with other things. It's doubtful that a well-placed RPG shot will now be able to take 1 death glider down, and the fate of the whole world rests on 3 humans and a renegade Jafar stuck behind enemy lines. Chef's kiss. So hype. I am giving this episode the highest episode rating for the whole season, 9.5 out of 10. The self-reflection. So, where do we go from here? I'd like to end the video quickly talking about the general themes of Season 1 of SG-1 and reflect on them and ruminate on why this show has become such a massive influence in my taste, in my writing, and in my life in general. An obvious through line that appeared more than once during the season was the concept and theme of cultural advancement. Our main characters must deal with the fact that the enemy that humanity faced in the feature film was but a single figure in a pantheon of enemies to contend with now that the Earth has been rediscovered by Apophis. And not only was that one enemy, Ra, was only just defeated by sheer luck and the quick thinking of a couple of humans, the whole enemy civilization that was revealed in the movie-length premiere episode, Children of the Gods, showed that the Goa'uld was an enemy beyond humanity's current capabilities and technological prowess. The only reason why it takes the whole season for Apophis to threaten the whole Earth is because Earth's distance from the Goa'uld's civilization's nearest foothold was just that far away. And it wasn't until the season finale that we see how close Apophis is truly to Earth after what seems to be a whole year of adventures for our main characters. Time and time again, multiple alien characters remark on how young or how primitive humanity is, and it's great that the comment made by Antaeus in the episode The Nox is repeated over the course of the season. The very young do not always do as they are told. It's amazing that that very comment and living up to that observation by the Nox is how we got to the point of the finale where SG-1 goes against what they were told to and go on an almost suicide mission in an attempt to save the whole world. Another main theme that can be observed during this season, but also in the series as a whole, especially once we go into the Cor-ai era in season 9 and 10, is the freedom to religion and belief. The writers are very careful to show real-life religions in a respectful manner, but also not shying away from atheism as well. Carter and DJ, being scientists, are very heavily implied to be atheistic, but especially with DJ's specialties in archaeology and anthropology, he treats every culture that they encounter with the utmost respect. In fact, the only characters that seem to be shoving their religions down everyone's throats are the Goa'uld in seasons 9 and 10, the Cor-ai, and so far, in season 1, Senator Kinsey. As a Christian myself, whenever I see the self-assuredness and, dare I say, cockiness that seems to be so intrinsically linked to American fundamentalist Christianity, always bothers me and grinds my gears a little. I believe one of the reasons why I enjoy this show so much is its openness in showcasing and tackling this theme or subject of freedom of religion. Each main character is extremely likable in that aspect, and if these characters were real, it would be so easy to respect each and every one of them. These two main themes that are strongly established in this first season of the series evolve and develop over the course of the show's 10 seasons. Over the seasons, you see the young humanity grow in strength and influence over the galactic struggles, and you see them mature. I remember reading or hearing somewhere, and I wish I can remember where so I can source it. It might have been in the series Bible document for season 3 that was released online years ago, but one of the main tentpoles for the writers of SG-1 was that unlike Star Trek, they wanted the main characters, the SGC and Earth, to always struggle. Now, even though, like I said earlier, humanity over the course of the seasons will grow in strength and advance in technology because of their meetings with new alien races and creating new alliances, the showrunners always maintained that sense of tension by making sure that a new complication or threat that can't be cleanly taken care of by humanity's latest new advancement in technology shows up. In fact, the balance is done so well in SG-1 that by the time the series storyline ends with the film The Arc of Truth, you never get any sense of egregious power creep while watching the episodes. The growth is so natural and realistically in-universe. And that is another reason of why I love this show so much, and it has affected my writing and my tendencies in storytelling. And finally, the last major reason why I think this show is so important to me are the characters. I've already touched on the fact that every one of the main cast of characters are extremely likable, but I also like that even during a very episodic-centric era of television, SG-1 managed to provide so many episodes that are so heavy on character work and character-driven plot. An easy comparison could be made with the X-Files in how a majority of their season would be an episodic case of the week or mission of the week, but where the X-Files gifts its dedicated viewers a mythology episode, SG-1 seems to gift its viewers with a character-focused episode. Quick examples in season 1 that I've already mentioned before during each episode's recaps, but for O'Neill, we got episodes like Cold Lazarus, to some extent Brief Candle. For DJ, we got Fire and Water, and obviously There But For the Grace of God. Carter is probably the one that had the least character-focused episodes, other than Hammond, who is treated more like a recurring character, though Don S. Davis's performance is always stellar, and he deserves that main cast billing. But in season 1, the most character-focused episodes we have for Carter is probably The First Commandment, and to some extent Singularity. But don't despair, as the show goes on, we get more episodes focused on her. Now, Teal'c, being the alien character, receives the most character-focused episodes in season 1, which is very smart as the writers obviously have to humanize him to the viewers, and what better way to universe build than by having his character-focused episodes also explore and deepen the viewer's understanding of Goa'uld and Jafar culture. Episodes focusing on Teal'c this season obviously include Bloodlines and Cor-ai. To end this section, I'll give a personalized rating for the first season. After a lot of consideration, I think I have to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Some stellar, absolutely stellar episodes, some disappointing ones, and a couple that are middle down the road, but it's such a strong first season of a series. And that concludes this video, and the maybe, quite possibly, not slightly, very definitely, in-depth recap of Stargate SG-1's first season. This second part of the season recap has taken so much longer to script, to film, to edit, because of my brand new full-time job. As I mentioned right at the beginning of this video, I managed to land a brand new full-time job that has been full of excitement, of stress, of fear. It's been a massive roller coaster ride for me. It has been such a massive learning experience, and obviously it had to be my main priority and has taken a lot of my energy throughout these last 6 months or so. That being said, now that I've passed the probation period for the job and are slowly getting used to working an office job, it's technically hybrid, but I'm utilizing going to the office every day as the drive to work gives me the time to get my head in the right mindset. But as I'm slowly getting used to working this job, I want to come back to making these kinds of videos. The goal is still the same, to one day be able to do this full-time, of course, with making monthly videos, but obviously while I have this full-time job, these videos might take longer to come out. Hopefully though, the next one won't take more than 6 months. Also, my Patreon has been dead because of my focus on the new full-time job, but I will get back to creating exclusive content for that as well. But that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please give the video a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe to my channel. If you're ever so kind and would like to support me monetarily, I do have the Patreon, like I just mentioned. The link will be in the description below. And I would like to know what people's thoughts are on the episodes in Season 1 of SG-1 between these two videos. From discussing with my family, I realized that I have quite different experiences watching these episodes for the video. One thing for sure is that my mother believes I'm quite harsh in labeling Tin Man as a good filler episode. It genuinely took me by surprise that my high opinion of politics seemed to be contrary to a majority of the fandom. But what can I say? These videos are filled with my opinions. What are yours? I'd love to know and discuss. I really hope you did enjoy this video, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.